So thanks everybody for coming down this evening. We're going to be here for a while, but we should be able to get through about 32 different candidates for this year's election. I also want to shout out our volunteers for helping us out for delivering this session, as it's been really well put together, so thank you. And also shout out to the GCRA for sponsoring the drinks and the coffees and teas as well. So firstly, my name is Freddie Watson. I work for a marine conservation charity called Blue Marine Foundation. We work all across the world, but we mainly have a focus. We also have a focus in the Channel Islands, and I manage our work over here. So that's kind of our relationship to Guernsey. And we've been having a few conversations in Guernsey and Sark and Alderney about kind of marine conservation and the environment in the wider Channel Island region. And from those conversations, we found out that Guernsey's coming up for election, but there seems to be kind of, it's quite tricky to organise a husting-style event for island-wide voting. So we came up with this idea to try and tackle that and to try and address it, hence why we have this set up here. So we'll see if it works. It's very much a trial. It's the first husting of this kind here in Guernsey, I believe, so please do bear with us. If this is successful, maybe this is a format that we could replicate in the future, and if it's not, at least we know not to do it again. So we'll find out and see how it goes. But we advertised 32 spots on a first come first served basis, and we managed to fill all 32 of those. So I think that's a really good start for, especially for the environment. It's a topic that a lot of people in Guernsey, from what I've heard, is something that hasn't necessarily been a main focus, or it's been forgotten about a little bit. So it's nice to shed a bit of the limelight onto the environment. So I'm going to move on to the start of session one. So I'm going to run through the format of this right now. So what we'll do, we'll kind of, the candidates will have 2 minutes each to run through their priorities for the environment. And then this will be followed by 30 minutes of Q&A with the audience, with yourselves. That's why we're running this, is to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions about the environment and the candidates' priorities towards the environment. The moderators, so that's me and a few of my colleagues who are doing the sessions following this, will be making sure that the answers to the Q&A session, so the answers to your questions in the audience, that the answers are capped to 40 seconds. So please can we ask for the audience questions to be concise as well. And if your question is not concise, we might just ask you to rethink your question, and we'll come back to you after that. And if you have any questions, please do raise your hand, and one of the volunteers with the microphone will come round and pass it round to you. So we have one volunteer down here and another volunteer in the middle here. So make yourself known if you have a question. And we'll also be very strict on the priority so the statements from the candidates about their priorities to the marine environment. So we'll be strict on that 2 minute session, that 2 minute kind of time frame, and also the 40-second answers. So on stage with me here we have, from your left to right, we have Stuart Jehan, we have Sally Rochester, Jennifer Strachan, Aidan Matthews, Tina Burry, Andy Cameron, John Gollop, and Rob Prow. So I'm going to start off the 2 minute statement part of this husting. So Stuart, do you want to start off with your 2 minute statement for the marine environment?
Of course, Freddie, thanks.
Sorry, the environment, not marine environment.
No problem. I'm Stuart Jehan. I'm one of 6 candidates falling under the banner of Forward Guernsey. Now, climate is one of our 6 core policies that we've been working on. It also cites the economic advantages for the island. Now, we know our natural environment is one of our greatest assets here on the island, but it's also one of our most fragile. So to protect this, we must embrace action on climate and sustainability. First, we need to accelerate the transition to clean energy. Supporting the development of an offshore wind farm isn't just to reduce emissions, it will secure our energy future and will eventually lower the energy costs for all islanders. It'll also bring a whole raft of new skill jobs for islanders, such as engineering, maintenance, marine services, technology, and this will create new career pathways for the younger locals. We must also protect the biodiversity in our seas. Our waters are home to rich marine life, and we need to look after the habitats which sustain our fishing industry, that support tourism, and that contribute to our global ecosystem. We need to make sure that we develop strong partnerships with fishers and environmental group. Striking that right balance between industry and ecology is very, very important. We need to support nature-based solutions to protect our coastlines, increasing biodiversity whilst reducing flood risks. And most importantly, climate action should never be out of reach for ordinary islanders. So we should be championing policies for more efficient homes, such as domestic solar panels, because fundamentally, sustainable must be affordable to be successful. And finally, we need leadership guided by evidence and not by ideology. We need to embed environmental sustainability into all government decisions so that climate is considered at every level.
Bang on time. Perfect.
Not bad, hey?
Thank you very much, Stuart. Sally, over to you for your 2 minutes, please.
Thank you and good evening. My name's Sally Rochester and I want to set out a vision for our island for which the protection and enhancement of our natural environment is a key building block. I stand for the creation of a long-term vision for our island that supports the well-being of current and future generations and provides them all with an opportunity to thrive. I'm an accountant working in the financial services sector and they need support and a sustainable future. I'm a wife and a mother of 2 headstrong teenagers who deserve an island that enables them to live a high-quality, purposeful life and to give of their best to that community. And I'm also a member of our exceptional community who wants everybody to have an equal opportunity to be successful and a good life. Social equality, environmental prosperity and economic success need to be delivered by the next states. The knowledge I've gained from my professional career, from studying for a Master's in Sustainability and from my work with industry bodies as well as in the third sector means I can draw on a really wide range of experience to work towards delivering those very important outcomes. But I need to be honest that balancing these priorities is not going to be easy. To be able to support our collective well-being will require elected candidates to agree a long-term vision for our island, to demonstrate good governance, and to encourage public participation in policy creation. These 3 things, I think, will take strong leadership and bravery. I stand because I believe that our island needs these skills more than ever, and I stand for leadership that has 3 critical components. I stand for courage, for wisdom and, importantly, for kindness. Leading our island towards a better future with these 3 things always at the forefront of my mind is my commitment. Thank you.
Almost don't need to give you a time frame. Thank you so much for being on time. Jennifer, on to your 2 minutes, please.
Excellent. I'm Jennifer Strachan, and the environment has been both my joy and worry in my personal and professional life. For many years, I've worked in finance as the Associate Director for Sustainable Investment at IAM Advisory. I also co-lead the Sustainable Business Initiative at Guernsey Chamber, where I've helped local companies become more sustainable. I've spoken at events covering everything from environmental frameworks and practical guidance for company directors to cost-effective approaches to sustainable pensions and ecotourism. So why am I worried? The world is rapidly approaching and in some cases crossing critical environmental tipping points. We need to be doing all we can to address this in Guernsey and embrace it as well as an economic opportunity. Though we have limited resources, we can be nimble to not only meet our goals, but also to provide an example of what can be done to the outside world. So, how can we do this? My vision is 3-fold. First, we need to make sure that government can deliver the excellent environmental strategies we already have, such as the Strategy for Nature, the Blue and Green Economy Supporting Plans. This means having the right tools, funding, and data to deliver them. Second, we should be ambitious. With our wind farm development, we could become a center of excellence for renewable energy. I would like to see us also embrace ecotourism and would support smart, sustainable building methods. Finally, my tagline is let's work together. Government, Charities, businesses, and civil service all have a role to play, and I'll be pushing from within government to make sure we partner with the community to deliver our plans. Thank you, and I hope I can count on your vote.
10 seconds remaining. You guys, this is a great start. Deputy Aidan Matthews, would you like to do your 2 minutes, please?
Sure, thank you. Hi, I'm Aidan Matthews. Protecting our island's natural environment is of vital importance for future generations, but so is the global environment. In Guernsey, we should keep green spaces. I particularly value those few spaces where people can see the natural world as part of their daily lives. But the island has a severe housing crisis and the pressure for land use is very high. Balancing the environment with economy and community to minimise downsides is a priority. I would not like to see this pressure translate into the use of greenfield land for development, so I support development which makes the best use of the limited land available. Historically, other countries built factories and warehouses as they industrialised, creating a legacy of brownfield sites that could be redeveloped in many European cities, but Guernsey's main industry was horticulture, leaving a legacy of glasshouse sites from our past. These the remaining disused hotels from our tourism boom can contribute. Guernsey has a patchwork of countryside, rural and suburban development. Small land parcels can support unique habitats which contribute to our biodiversity. Understanding and protecting these spaces is key. And we've signed up to the Ramsar Convention with 2 sites for Guernsey, Leo Island and Livre, a wetland site, and Herm Jetu and the Humps, an important marine ecosystem. Both feature tidal ranges amongst the highest in the world, so they're a focus for conservation efforts alongside a number of other sites around the island. Globally, our impact may be small, but we still need to play our part and encourage others to do so too. Our energy strategy and net zero policy is much less costly than for other countries, as we lack heavy industries or fossil fuel extraction, and our links with the electricity grid in France help too. But we can move forwards with renewable energy generation through offshore wind and, in the future, tidal energy too. I support safer roads for pedestrian cyclists, and finally, our drinking water must stay clean and free of pollution from forever chemicals like PFAS and pesticides.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Aidan Matthews. Next up is Deputy Tina Berry.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Tina Berry. I'm a current deputy and looking to be re-elected for a second term. I'm going to guess that an event like this, there's probably 2 types of people in the audience. People like me who really care about the environment but are far from experts, and probably people with quite a lot of expertise. And in that case, I would actually rather be listening to you than you listening to me. But that's not how this game works, unfortunately. But I just want to put that out there because I am by no means an expert on the environment, and I'm not sitting up here pretending to be. But I do really care about it, and I do understand its importance. So should I be re-elected, I will continue to listen to people who know more about it than I do and do my research. But I do believe that the environment underpins everything. I wrote as much in my last manifesto. I said we might as well all pack up and go home if we trash our environment, because as important as something like the economy is, it doesn't matter a jot if we lose our environmental stability. A huge amount of important work has been done this term, setting up the Nature Commission to carry forward the strategy for nature, beginning on the Marine Spatial Plan, which, when completed, will support the setting up of marine protected areas, the states agreeing to bio-net gain as a planning principle, the electricity strategy, and seriously looking at our options for offshore renewable energy production. I have supported all of these things, and I will continue to do so for all initiatives that benefit our precious environment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Berry. Next up is Deputy Andy Cameron.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Andy Cameron. Over this term, I've served on both the Environment and Infrastructure Committee under a president with genuine and infectious passion for the environment, and on the Committee for Education, Sport and Culture. Across both roles, I've focused on turning policy into practical change, helping to expand environmental initiatives and pushing for greater uptake of active travel by our school students as part of a broader effort to make transport healthier, safer and more sustainable. Transport is a major piece of the emissions puzzle, and we've made real progress this term. With my IT background, I helped fast-track the integration of real-time bus timetables onto Google Maps and contributed to launching the Guernsey taxi app. Both have seen steady growth in user numbers, improving access and reliability. The taxi app in particular has dramatically reduced dead miles, cutting emissions and offering a much more efficient service for islanders. We're also seeing promising trends in active travel and electric vehicle uptake, but we must keep investing in the infrastructure to support this, especially around schools. Children should be able to walk or cycle safely and independently, and parents should feel confident letting them do so. Public transport remains central to the transition. A more efficient, accessible service isn't just good for reducing congestion, it's critical for cutting emissions and making sustainable travel the easy choice for more people. But transport isn't just one part of the challenge. If we're serious about tackling emissions and household bills, retrofitting homes is one of the smartest moves we can make. Too many houses in Guernsey are cold, damp, inefficient and expensive to heat.
10 seconds.
Upgrading insulation and switching to low-carbon systems like heat pumps cuts emissions, improves health and lowers costs. It's also about fairness. Lower-income households feel energy costs the most. Retrofitting helps level the playing field.
Going to have to stop you there.
Okay, sorry. All right, cheers.
Thank you, Deputy Andy Cameron. Next up is Deputy John Gollop.
Hello, thank you. I'd hoped it was 3 minutes too, but it's only 2 minutes. Andy's reminded me, actually, that I use the buses quite a bit. I think I welcome the change from CT Plus to Stagecoach, but with the reservation that we moved from what used to be a community company to a more commercial company. But I believe there's a bus users meeting coming up very soon this weekend, and I'll go to that. Over the years, I've served on various environmental committees, including Deputy Burford's Environment Committee when she was Minister, on 3 years as President of Planning, and on Heritage. And I'm very interested in all aspects of the subject. And like others, I support the Nature Commission and much of the work of environment and infrastructure this term. I also want to pick up on something Stuart said. We do need practical financial solutions to environmental issues. We need to factor them in and actually factor in the cost of environmental things when we make policy decisions, not just based on the financial cost of things. What I would say, though, is that ideology isn't always a bad thing. I'm a member of the Green Party of England and Wales, and I think we do need to have the environment fully placed. I believe biodiversity requires stronger strategic planning, additional legislation and enforcement, as well as education. And I wish to see a revival of our growing industry on sites and derelict glasshouses. I don't want too many new gardens. I think we need to retain our agricultural and horticultural history. And I think we need more grants and subsidies for that. And we also need the states and our learned nature organisations to buy land and tend it.
10 seconds.
I also believe very much in the wind energy project, but think local renewables deserve a stronger shout. I agree with Deputy David DeLisle there. And I think we need to reform electricity for Alderney and Sark as well and have more electric vehicles.
Thank you, Deputy Gollop. Last up, we have Deputy Rob Prow.
Thank you very much, and a very good evening. My name is Rob Prow. The first thing I really want to say is I want to thank the team for organising and setting up this opportunity. The environment is a massively important and challenging topic, and all the discussion and input today will be of enormous benefit, whatever the outcomes of the election are. I apologise for referring to notes, but I need to ensure I stick to my 2 minutes. My focus is centred on Guernsey and what must be achieved and can be achieved here in this bailiwick. It's not just climate change. It's about our local environment, pollution, and preserving nature on land and sea. We need to concentrate on Guernsey rather than a divided global agenda in which the biggest culprits are hugely populated countries, China, India, US. We absolutely need to protect green fields and wild open spaces, develop derelict buildings and build upwards to a degree. Guernsey must quickly become a more sustainable, making more products on island and growing as much food as we can to avoid packaging and freight. Renewable energy opportunities must be grasped, including incentivising solar panels on properties. I have listened in the States to complex debates focusing on global targets. I have watched the alarming documentaries, particularly David Attenborough. I do not need to be convinced that we have a crisis, but not sure about all the overload of conflicting advice. I want the States to concentrate on support on what we can meaningfully achieve here. Thank you.
Perfect. Bang on time. Thank you very much. So that concludes each of the candidates' 2-minute statement of priorities for the environment. So thank you so much all for keeping on time. We're perfectly on track. This is a great start. So as a marine conservation charity, we just wanted to get at least one marine-focused question in there at the start, and then we'll open it up to the audience for questions and answers. So let me get my question up. So I'm going to ask a question, and Stuart Jehan, if you could answer first. So the question is, what is your opinion on marine protected areas and how they work for Guernsey?
Thank you, Freddie. Not yet a deputy. Yes, absolutely. We have to look at this, perhaps levering from the existing Ramsar sites, as was explained by Aidan just a couple of minutes ago, and also following Jersey's sizable marine protected area around that island. However, ours must be based on robust ecological data, and it needs to be in partnership with local stakeholders, for instance, local fisheries. Perhaps even there could be the opportunity to collaborate with Jersey. Now, it's also worth mentioning the UK is a member of OSPAR, so as a Crown dependency, it seems entirely logical to have a marine protected area. It's essential to protect our vital habitats, such as seagrass beds, reefs, helping fish stocks, and safeguarding marine biodiversity. It's not about banning activity, but it's about managing it sustainably.
Perfect. Thanks for wrapping up. 40 seconds goes very fast, so I appreciate. Thank you for keeping to time. Sally, next up is you. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, it's fine. Thank you. As the Paris Agreement acts as a global accord for climate, so the UN Convention for Biological Diversity provides that level of ambition. And as part of that, there is a global objective, I believe, of 30% by 2030 for marine conservation. And we've seen a steady stream of countries sign up to that. So as citizens of the globe, I think it's right that Guernsey does the same. But I want us to be quite careful about how we do that. We don't know what our assets are in the marine water, and therefore I don't think we know currently how best to protect them. So I think we need to do careful research to align with that global accord and protect our waters.
Perfect. Thank you, Sally. Next up is Jennifer. Would you like me to repeat the question?
It's fine, thanks. So I am in favour of marine protected areas, and I would love to see one in Guernsey. However, we do not have a huge amount of inshore bottom trawling. We have limited government bandwidth, and we have other pressing environmental issues. So I have to say, on this one, I'm probably on the let's wait and see on this, and let's digest some of the frameworks that we've already got in place that need protection. But I would say, with regard to our wind farm, we'll be getting a lot more data as we start understanding our seabed better. That will help us.
Brilliant, thank you. Next up is Deputy Aidan Matthews.
Hi, thanks, Freddie. Yeah, I think it would be a great idea for us to set up an MPA. I think the question that we'd have is where would we put it, and we would need to, and we are working on some surveys to understand our marine environment better to be able to do that. We do have various protections for our marine environment already in place, but they're a patchwork of different licensing conditions for fishing, and they're not always adhered to. So although we don't think we allow much in the way of excessive overfishing. We just don't know. And we know that it is possible for fishermen or fishing craft to break some of their rules, and having an MPA would really sort of set it out as being very clear what the areas are that are being protected, and that would, I think, bring some clarity that would be very useful.
Thank you. Great. Next up is Deputy Tina Berry.
Thank you. As I understand it, in terms of marine protected areas, one of the most important things is actually defining what that means. I believe that some exist elsewhere that are a bit naff, really. So making sure that we actually define what we mean. I think some of the underpinning work that we've already started in terms of the marine spatial plan is what's going to inform our marine protected area. It's going to give that information. So that's really important to complete. I believe it's underway and should be complete by the end of next year. So it's very important to support that piece of work in order to then know what we should do in terms of a MPA here.
Brilliant. Thank you. 40 seconds goes very quickly. Next up is Deputy Andy Cameron.
Thanks. In recent years, we've introduced restrictions to fishing licensing, and this has seen a marked increase. The pair trawling especially was pretty indiscriminate to marine mammals, and I regularly go out kayaking and swimming, and what used to be quite a rarity with seals and dolphins is now quite commonplace. So I do believe that fish stocks really have improved considerably over the last few years.
10 seconds.
I mean, I would be completely in favour of a marine protected area as well, to go a little bit further than that. Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. Next up is Deputy John Gollop.
Yeah, it's only 40 seconds. Yeah.
Only 40 seconds, yeah.
Facilitator Freddie Watson reminded me we met during the impressive talk at the Literary Festival by Charles Clover, who's an environmental journalist of the Blue Marine Foundation, and he was basically informing us Jersey are well ahead of us. I believe in marine protected areas. I think we need a cooperation with the fishermen, the economic development, the Crown, external relations, and I would like to see a marine national park. It will need a degree of financial subsidy.
10 seconds.
What I do also believe is that economic development need to be straight about where we're going with the fishing sector. Because Andy may be right, ormers have increased in some fish, but octopus have increased at the extent of expense of traditional crabs and lobsters. I think we need to have a reset of the industry and a degree of subsidy and also greater protection of our fish stocks.
Thank you, John. Thank you. And next up is Deputy Rob Prow.
Thank you. Well, one of the advantages of coming last, of course, is listening to all the answers. And I agree with just about everything that's been said. I wish there was the same amount of consensus in the States at the moment. So I don't need to repeat. I think what I would say is this. It's a straight question and it needs a straight answer. So I absolutely do support it. If you're serious about protecting the marine environment, then this is the sort of structure that has to be in place. Yes, we've in all the answers already, we've talked about research and data and properly scoping what this is. And with that caveat, I completely support the question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So that concludes Blue Marine Foundation's question, at least on the marine environment. I'm going to open it up to the floor now. We have 30 minutes of Q&A. We already have one hand up here in the green shirt. If you could pass the microphone to you, please, that would be great.
Hi, everybody. My name is Estelle Levin-Nally. Some of you know me. I'm an international advisor on global environmental policy and on human rights, and I'm a sustainability advisor, basically, which is the basis for my question. Rob, I was interested and concerned to hear the comment you made about the fact that we have a lesser responsibility than other nations who, at a national level, may produce higher emissions than tiny little Guernsey. But if you look cumulatively at emissions, the UK has a very large responsibility over history. If you look at per capita emissions, our standard of life means that as individuals, we relatively have a much higher impact than individuals in those nations. And finally, as an offshore financial centre that facilitates the expansion of global inequality by servicing wealth and the consolidation and increase of wealth for high net worth individuals, and the fact that the top 1% of the wealthy contributed 26 times the global average increase, 26 times more increase to emissions than others, means that we do have a responsibility and we do have opportunities to drive change. And this is where my question comes in. I really respect and value the fact that many of the candidates are privileging and prioritising what we can do for local nature. And for Guernsey, so we as a population can benefit from our local nature, the ecosystem services it comes. First and foremost, that's what we have control over, and it's what will bring the greatest benefit to our citizenry. But we are connected to the global environment and to the global economy, and there are levers through which we can influence and minimise the harms that are caused by others. And I'm keen to understand the extent to which each of you see an opportunity for Guernsey through our professional services sector, and perhaps through other forms of influence, to play our role on the world stage in a way that is proportionate and realistic to our resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. Just so that I have that correct. So the question is really focused around how Guernsey can influence and minimise harm caused by using its status as.
Let me make it clear. I'm sorry for taking such a long time to get to it. I have a propensity for that, as people who know me will know over dinner parties. The question is, how can we, as a small island with limited resources, understanding the assets and leverage that we do have, make a meaningful impact on the global environment?
We're going to move over from the very end from Stuart. So Sally, would you like to tackle that first, and then we'll come back round to Stuart?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Estelle. It's a really important question to answer. And obviously, being part of financial services, I would say that we have both in terms of the emissions that we create through the services we provide, and in terms of pivoting our financial services to a sustainable finance strategy, have an opportunity to limit the damage that's done, and also to act as global role models in diverting finance towards a more sustainable future. So I think we should not underestimate the global influence that we can have on this island, and I think we should progress a finance strategy that supports sustainable finance as a matter of priority.
Thank you for the very concise answer and to 40 seconds. Reminder to the candidates that we're going to try to keep these answers to about 40 seconds, so concise as well. Handing over to Jennifer.
So the financial assets that we manage and that flow through the island, I think, are our biggest lever to making global change. So absolutely, it's a spot-on question. And that also is, interestingly, through our insurance sector. We are seeing those risks on the ground because the insurance people are actually seeing the consequences of global warming. So absolutely, I think there's a huge role there, but we can't actually make that happen unless we walk the walk and do it ourselves on island, because we won't be respected as a sustainable finance centre unless we do.
Thank you. And handing over to Deputy Aidan Matthews.
Hi, thanks. I quite often hear the argument that Guernsey doesn't need to be concerned about global warming or emissions because we're so small we can't possibly have very much effect, which I think is a silly argument. And you quite often hear the sort of the net zero is going to cost us a lot of money or it's going to be very difficult to do. They're importing arguments from other places that don't necessarily apply to us. We've actually got quite a clear path for our own emissions to be able to do that because we don't have some of the issues that other countries have got. And it's going to happen. But I think you're right that we can look to set an example is the first stage, but also through finance. I mean, there's an awful lot that we could do through supporting green finance on the island, but also sort of just looking at measuring the sort of Scope 3 emissions of businesses that have assets invested here to see just to measure it, and that will provide some impetus to perhaps bring that down. These are changes that are going to happen globally.
I'm going to have to stop you there.
Sorry.
No problem. And moving on to Deputy Tina Berry.
Thanks very much, Estelle, for proving the point that I made in my my opening statement, that I'd rather be listening to the experts in the audience than the other way round. But thanks for your question. I think even though we're small, Guernsey can lead by example. We've shown that, for example, with our waste strategy, where we're miles ahead of lots of places. Our climate change policy is already not looking inward. It does look outward. And how we're looking at the wind, the offshore wind renewables at the moment, you know, that's an export model that we've approved. So again, that's looking outwards rather than inwards. So I do think we've already got some really good things in place, and it's just about building on those and keeping that momentum going.
Thank you, Deputy Perry. And moving on to Deputy Andy Cameron.
Thank you. Yeah, I think as an island, we're a wealthy island. We need to be filling our responsibility. If we're not setting the example to other nations, then what chance have poorer countries got? We need to be encouraging organisations to fill their corporate social responsibility. I mean, I think that's already happening with things like the Nature Commission and things like that, but there's still a lot of organisations out there that just simply aren't contributing whatsoever towards this. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Moving on to Deputy John Gollop, 40 seconds.
I thank Estelle for her question because it raises, as Andy says, the ESG, the environmental, social and governance issues. I think actually we have to start with the states because we've got to ensure that everything we do across our 5,000 employees and our numerous departments are going in the right direction. And that includes our investment policies, because where the states invest, it is like a large financial institution and needs ethical discipline and management.
Seconds, John.
For some time, Guernsey Finance and GFSC have been raising the bar per green investment, but it's gone a bit quiet recently. So I very much want to ensure we have a beacon to the world and we are a test bed.
Thank you, John. And moving on to Deputy Rob Prow.
Yeah, I also thank Estelle for the question, and it gives me an opportunity to absolutely clarify something. What I set out was my priorities. I do not believe that we have a lesser responsibility, and if that's what you took from what I said, that's not what I meant. I think we got to cut to the chase is where we are able to influence, and one of the ways we can influence is through our excellent financial centre, and all the initiatives that are in play now need to be supported around that green finance agenda, which I totally support, and I think that is a way that both politically and through the industry, we can influence the bigger countries. And so, yes, we do have a responsibility. And I think I would tease out the
Rob, I'm going to have to stop
as the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. And lastly, for this question, moving on to Stuart Jehan.
Thank you, Freddie. I lived for a decade in Luxembourg, and obviously that's a very wealthy country and it has very aggressive sustainability targets as well. So I'm taking a few notes from there, perhaps introducing energy labels, especially for new builds, to improve efficiency. Solar panels, perhaps we could incentivize domestic use by perhaps some structured government loans to individuals. EVs to improve the infrastructure for electric vehicles, incentives to increase active travel, bicycles, and of course, fundamentally, we need to look at education because people need to be educated as to what the impact of their being is on their carbon footprint.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stuart. So that concludes the answers for the first question. We have a second question over here in the pink shirt.
A very simple question. Scaly crickets or East Coast development?
Is there a specific question? That's the question. So we won't start with Sally this time. Jennifer, would you like to go first, please? You have 40 seconds.
So scaly crickets. Thank you, Michael. That just sums up the exact dilemma that we have. We need development. We need to protect our biodiversity. So what I like about that particular question is that we have tasked an agency, the Guernsey Development Agency, in particular for development along that area of the coast. They've come up with some excellent plans. But what they've also done is done a huge amount of work in trying to figure out how you can move the scaly crickets from one place to another. And so I think it's that joined up thinking, it's that working together with stakeholders that will allow us to start solving some of those really thorny questions.
Thank you so much. And moving on to Deputy Aidan Matthews.
Thanks, Freddie. Yeah, the East Coast development is a really important development, actually, and it can really unlock a lot of space and reclaim space, so it's really worth doing. Scaly crickets, of course we want to protect the scaly crickets, and they've done some work to see if we can move them. so we can have both. So I think I'd like to be able to say it's not an either-or question, but we can have both, and the crickets could find a location that would suit them, I would hope.
Thank you, Deputy Matthews. Moving on to Deputy Tina Berry.
Thank you. So the question is scaly crickets or East Coast development. My answer is both, please. And as others have said, I do think that the GDA, the Development Agency, are actually doing a really good job at looking at things in the round. And one of the things they presented to us quite recently is how they have looked in depth with proper consultation with people who know about moving the scaly crickets. But one of the additional benefits with that is that they've pitched that as an education piece. So it will actually be school students, slightly older school students, being involved with that project. So for me, I think that feels like a win-win-win.
Amazing, thank you. Moving on to Deputy Andy Cameron.
I won't repeat what other people have said. East Coast development is vitally important. As others have said, I think we can. I don't think that the scaly crickets are quite as rare as what we initially thought. And if we can find some way of moving habitats along, then and reintroducing them back into the whatever we decide to develop, then all the better.
Amazing. Thank you, Deputy Cameron. Moving on to Deputy John Gollop.
I want to shout out for the crickets. There's no doubt it was a major factor in why we rejected that 300 to 400 million collectively harbour idea of Long Hook. It wasn't irrelevant, and we're glad Environment and Infrastructure now take that view, because I couldn't see the merits environmentally of building a new harbour outside Boar Avenue in that way. I think an important point with this is we need to create new habitats for the creatures, and also focus on development that works for us in terms of our ecology. And well, perhaps I'll give that answer to another question.
John, I'm going to have to stop you there. Thank you. Moving on to Deputy Rob Prow.
Thank you. Scaly crickets. Yeah, actually, I think this is a great question. And why I think it's a great question, because it completely teases out the tensions that we have about protecting the environment and development. So I think that there's a subtext in that question, which I think is a good one. And what, for me, just the mention of scaly crickets and that tension that the Development Agency and the Environment Department, and in fact everybody in that development has got to think about the environment.
10 seconds, Rob.
That'll do me.
That'll do. Good way to end. Moving towards the end, Stuart, Jehan.
Thank you, Freddie. It's clear that the GDA is doing some great work, but you're absolutely right. We have to ensure land use decisions on the East Coast, or indeed anywhere on our island, meets our biodiversity objectives. We need to restore degraded habitats like wetlands and hedgerows, and we need to invest in nature-based solutions, such as pollinator corridors. We need to stimulate environmental protections by engaging landowners, schools, and businesses in habitat stewardship. We need to help our natural capital not only to survive, but to recover.
Perfect. That was 30 seconds. And last but not least, moving on to Sally.
Thank you, Michael, for an exceptional question. I can't believe I'm last in the line on this one. But you remember in my introduction, I talked about balancing social equality, environmental prosperity and economic success. And that question embodies exactly that point. And I think what's interesting about the scaly crickets is not the crickets, it's the principle that underlies the crickets that is the conversation we need to have about protecting and enhancing biodiversity, because it not only helps our mental health, our physical health, it not only helps us address climate change, but it provides a foundation for business to thrive as well. So a wonderful question that really brings it very succinctly into focus. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally, and thanks everyone for keeping on time. Another question we have at the back.
Yeah, I'm a candidate myself tonight, but this is something I'm passionate about. I'll start with the question and then I'll say what I'm asking it. What would you do to make the roads safer for children to be able to take themselves to school? That's the question. At the moment, we've got a ridiculous situation where parents are too scared to let their kids walk and cycle to school, and I'm talking about secondary school children as well. I regularly see people driving less than a mile to school to avoid their kids having to walk and cycle. In the recent law enforcement survey, 1,700 respondents, most of them, the biggest concern was dangerous driving. In the recent visitors' exit survey, the biggest complaint about the island was volume of traffic, no pavements and or lack of pavements, and lack of cycle paths. We've got a law that states any vehicle over 2 tonne has to be restricted to 25 mile an hour, and the police are happy to openly admit that they don't enforce it. So we've got things like the little lane opposite the Catel Duzain there, which is supposedly a Rouxel Tranquil, which is suggested 15 miles an hour, but you're legally allowed to drive 35 miles an hour, so you've got massive Range Rovers that are being let to drive 35 miles an hour through what are supposed to be Rouxel Tranquils. I could go on and on and on, but basically you've got the gist of it. I'd like to know how you would make it safer for my son to get to... He's 8 years old, he's cycled on his own bike for 18 months. I could happily let him go on his own as long as I knew there was no other drivers around. But how would you make it safer for him and his friends and everybody else to be happier to get out of a car and use their legs to get about?
Thank you for the concise question. I think Deputy Aidan Matthews, would you like to go first?
Thanks, Ross, and I am completely on your page with that. I've got a 9-year-old boy, and I won't actually let him ride to school by himself because it's just not safe, the roads that he goes on. And I know, and it's almost every time that this comes up in an E&I meeting, I'm asking, can we do something to look at making roads one way? Can we add, because our roads are just too narrow. That's the simple answer, is that they were built for horses and carts, and putting two-way traffic on them, half of them haven't got pavements in the right places. And we really need to have a think about how we can improve that. We have made some steps. So there have been some school streets, and the ones in St Martin's have got really, really popular. But there's so much more to do in terms of looking at how our road structures. And I think we just can't have two-way traffic on a lot of roads. We have to look at if we can put a one-way system into some places and have a cycle lane and contraflow. And
I'm going to stop you there.
Sorry.
Thank you, Deputy. Moving on to Deputy Tina Berry.
Thanks, Ross. So I think one of the things that I would do is something that you've been doing anyway, as part of our committee work on ESS, the affordable housing developments. When we're looking at those, it's not just about plonking houses in spaces. It's about all the infrastructure that goes around it. And as you'll know, a lot of the time we are looking at how we can connect those new developments to where they need to be connected to. And we're not just talking about roads nowadays. We are talking about cycle paths and...
10 seconds.
So I think continuing to do that is really important, because it's difficult, as Aidan was just saying, to retrofit what we've got, but anything new, we should be doing it.
Thank you. And Deputy Andy Cameron?
Yeah, so a really good point, Ross. I am a keen cyclist. I'm also sit on several school committees and the interim governance board, and it is something, active travel is something that I push with the head teachers, and some schools are better. St Martin's is a very good example of the school streets, and other schools that there's just literally just no buy-in whatsoever from the head teacher and the staff. They're just not interested in trying to promote it at all.
10 seconds.
I think cycle contraflows could be the answer for a lot of places. I think Capels have been pushing really hard because I think that is one of the most lethal schools that we've got really at the moment. So I'd be really keen to see some sort of cycle contraflow set up around there with early in next term really, and work on the rest of the other schools, including the secondary schools as well.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy John Gollop.
Andy makes positive points. We made the difference at Bobini and we need to think outside the box. I would agree we need to look at one-way systems and school management of areas. I support active travel. I've been president of Living Streets. I work with Aidan on the committee. I'd like to see more work from education and E&I on supporting things like the schools walks. We need improved bus services and also on the Guernsey road users network, whereby we want actually not just an education message of expect the unexpected,
10 seconds, John.
but more importantly, actually having speed restrictions on Route Tranquil and I'm afraid being a little bit tougher in areas where there's vulnerable people and frankly increasing the size of pavements as well.
Going to
more demarcation.
Thank you. And Deputy Rob Prow.
A great question, a good challenging question. I think to summarise the question asked, what I would do. I'll tell you what I would do. I would raise this up the political agenda. Environment and infrastructure and home affairs this term actually have done a lot of work, but frankly, not enough. We've got a nightmare road infrastructure. It's very challenging, and the police have done some public surveys work, and road safety comes right at the top. So therefore, what I would do is work with the environment, infrastructure and home affairs is to actually raise the whole topic right up the political agenda.
Thank you, Deputy. Moving on to Stuart Jehan.
Thank you, Freddie. Excellent question, Ross. And I think there's a number of us here which is very passionate about this subject. Now, I agree somewhat with Aidan. I have noticed that there are a lot more bicycles on the road, especially e-bikes, much more now than a few years ago. So there is a gradual culture shift. Now, I want to cite the Dutch model. I spent a lot of time in the Netherlands over the last decade. And perhaps we need to look at a fundamental change in the local way of doing things, perhaps giving bicycles more priority on our road systems, perhaps look at introducing cycle paths, perhaps with a single lane and cycle paths either side. But I agree that there has to be a fundamental change, Ross.
Thank you, Stuart. Sally.
So what a great question for the middle of Better Journeys Week, which is an initiative to encourage more active travel. Let's start with the good news. I was counting traffic on Tuesday morning, and 19% of journeys were active journeys on Tuesday in the sunshine, which is phenomenal. Great news that we've looked at the infrastructure in the north of the island as part of developing the north of the island and thought about active travel. Let's extend that to the rest of the island and let's incorporate those findings into the development of the island over time. Infrastructure is probably the most important thing to encourage people to travel actively. And I know we all want to do that and we want our children to do it too.
Thanks, Sally. And last but not least, Jennifer Strachan.
Just to start off, I like Stuart's ideas. I love pinching good ideas from other places that have worked. Why not? I want to touch on two different things, which I agree with a lot of what's been said, but two things I wanted to raise which hasn't been discussed. One is just getting cars off the road. So that includes buses, that includes making those pathways for bike riding, which a lot of people have touched on. The other thing is to make it, we're very car friendly. We have free parking. It's dead easy to go in, put your car, grab your car. So maybe, dare I say, maybe not so car friendly. And the other thing is to change that mindset. That if we can shift that mindset, and that's probably not the people in this room, but it's the people that aren't coming tonight.
Thank you. We have time for one more One more question, please.
Can I just do a quick hands up? Take 10 seconds.
Quick hands up. Go for it.
Right, that over 2-ton law, so if you've got a vehicle over 2 ton, by law, you're supposed to drive at 25 mile an hour. Do you think that all road traffic safety laws should be enforced? Yes or no? Hands up if you agree that they should be.
Yeah, with some qualification.
We're going to have to move on to the next question, please. Time for one more question from the session.
Hello, my name is Tom. I'm new on the scene down here. Little question for the board. There's been lots of chatter about incentivising domestic solar panels, and realistically, I think that's inefficient in the long term because the majority of households just can't afford that thing. My question is, in terms of incentivising the corporations and rousing the incorporation of sustainability in business across Guernsey, how would you guys go about doing that?
I'm going to keep these as concise as possible, please, because we're running out of time. But we'll start with Deputy Tina Berry, please.
A really nitty-gritty one for me starting, thank you. As you say, I mean, I think asking corporates to contribute to that more than your average individual person is probably better in terms of economic viability and affordability, and probably fairer as well. So I'm not sure how I'd go about doing it, to be honest with you, but obviously build solar panels on new offices, or, you know, tax incentives are always always encouraging for businesses. So yeah, financial breaks for doing the right thing environmentally is generally where you start. Not as money makers, because what you want to do is try and change the behaviour, just to encourage people to do that.
Thank you. Deputy Andy Cameron.
If we're talking about micro-renewable on houses and things like that, I mean, we're starting to get close to what we actually agreed within the electricity strategy. So, I mean, I just don't think it's particularly efficient to start subsidising micro-renewables on people's houses and things. I mean, new builds where it's possible. I'd much rather see greater investment in other renewables than solar power, because we still need to top that energy up when it's not sunny and everything as well. So,
other communities do have a degree of loans or grants for energy efficiency and energy insulation, and I think we should introduce that. We've already got legislation that facilitates it. Another point is housing. We are sitting on ESS with Tina at one time. It's absurd that we give the same winter fuel allowance to people who need it and people who don't, depending on their housing insulation. With corporates, I very much think you should look at consumption tax and incentives and swings and roundabouts, really, carrots and sticks.
Thank you. Deputy Rob Prow.
Yeah, incentivisation is actually a really useful tool for a government. In some ways, it's the only one, real one that we have. And I think incentivisation is not just about funding or grants. It's about planning permission. It's about government making things easier. But I think, for me, the whole sustainability agenda is key. Growing our own food and government making it much easier and affordable for that to be done.
Thank you. And moving on to Stuart Jehan.
Thank you, Freddie. Great question, Tom. So in the EU, obviously there are a lot more solar panels than over here. And the reason for this is that you have preferential loans, perhaps by government or perhaps a utility company such as Guernsey Electricity, offered to both commercial enterprises and the individual consumer. Now, the cost of these preferential loans works out to roughly the amount of electricity saved. So essentially, there's no net cost to the consumer. And I think the key to this is that it has to be affordable to every member of the demographic to be successful.
Thank you, Stuart. Sally?
So, Dom, I think you make an excellent point that business has to be one of the major contributors to move to a sustainable future. I lead the sustainability work in my firm, and I can assure you all it's very hard work. Why is it hard work? Well, business is designed to create short-term profits, not designed to support a sustainable future. So I think there's a number of conversations we probably need to have at an island level about the tools that we've got to change that behaviour from businesses. We can use law, we can use regulation, we can use the fiscal levers that we've been talking about, but we can equally use our own public demands to require businesses behave in a more sustainable way.
Thanks, Sally. And Jennifer?
So if we look at what the corporate role could be, and I like we've talked a little bit about the nudge idea of taxes and incentives. I do know some firms are subsidizing their staff to have e-bikes. Tax breaks for bus passes could be an idea. And I like the idea of looking at those companies that are providing energy infrastructure, say Guernsey Electricity. Could we have a loan scheme where, exactly as I said, it's tied to the property, and all of a sudden you could then borrow against that, and the property, if it's sold, the loan stays with the company. But I think also coming back to getting cars off the road, putting costs in for, a lot of companies have got big, huge free parking garages underneath them. There's no penalty them at all to supporting their staff sort of driving those cars. So it's a bit both ways.
Thank you. And lastly, Aidan Matthews.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, it's always difficult to know where to draw the balance when you're dealing with businesses about where between carrot and sticks. So do you go for try and offer incentives of tax breaks and schemes to try and encourage companies to do things, or you can go down a sort of regulatory road. I mean, we could do things with things like planning, where you're building new things to say put solar panels on and that sort of thing. But that's always the difficulty is, do you offer breaks or do you? And sometimes it's a case of doing both. I wouldn't rule out though. I mean, you talked about domestic solar and saying that it was sort of probably, and you're right, it's
10 seconds
efficient, but it does generate a sort of bit of buy-in amongst the public to have them there, and it does generate a little bit of energy resilience, even if it might not be contributing much to our carbon emissions. That resilience can sometimes be a useful feature in the grid if our grid can actually be smart enough to support it.
Thank you. And so that concludes this first session. So thank you all to the candidates for joining us, and thank you all for joining us.
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. My name's Caitlin Duckman. I'm a sustainability advisor here on Guernsey. I'm a certified carbon literacy facilitator and a domestic energy assessor, and I'll be your moderator for session 2 tonight. So I'll just recap the way that this session will work. So firstly, candidates will be given 2 minutes to state their sustainability priorities, and then we'll be following this with 30 minutes of audience Q&A. Us as the moderators will be quite strict on time tonight. We only have 40 seconds per question, and we'll be giving you a 10-second warning so that you can wrap up. We're asking for audience questions to be concise and directed to all candidates. If the question isn't concise, I'm afraid we will have to cut you off and ask you to rethink your question, and we'll come back to you. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and one of the volunteers with microphones will come to you. I think that's everything. So on the stage from left to right, we have Deputy Gavin St. Pier, Deputy Victoria Oliver, Deputy Lindsay de Sumray, Thomas Moore, Rosemarie Henderson, Andy Livre, Susie Gallienne, and Deputy Sasha Kazantseva-Miller. Okay, so please could I invite Deputy Gavin St. Pier to start his 2-minute sustainability statement.
Well, good evening, and thank you very much for inviting me. This is my 4th election and my 3rd proper hustings, and I have to say I'm quite nervous. This is not my area of specialist expertise. So I think that's the first point that I wish to make, that if I am re-elected on these issues, I'll be very much looking to listen to and engage with the experts in that area. I think the second point to make is that climate transition is one of Forward Guernsey's 6 core policy priorities. Now, it does feel in the 9 months or so since we began drafting a manifesto that the zeitgeist has moved somewhat, not least with the re-election of Donald Trump, and the sort of political support for net zero around the world by 2050 has declined somewhat. However, we are committed to it, notwithstanding that climate transition was not one of the public's top priorities. Nonetheless, and therefore support for a net zero by 2050 may not be good politics for some, but we are committed to it. We believe that it is actually good economics, but more importantly than that, it is the right thing for the community, and it's the right thing particularly for next generations, which absolutely underpins the whole philosophy and purpose of Forward Guernsey. However, the transition does need to be fair, and one of the ways that we think that can be achieved is by giving islanders a platform through a citizens' assembly by which the community can come together and agree on the policies which that they can buy into. And we need to recognise the economic opportunities, particularly, of course, with sustainable finance, and also the support for the offshore wind farm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to Deputy Victoria Oliver, please.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. My name is Victoria Oliver, and I want to highlight my environment commitments that I've made during this term as a deputy. To be clear about what I've done, not just about what I believe in. As President of the Development and Planning Authority, I've made it a priority to put the environment at the heart of the planning system by adopting the strategy for nature. And this means that any development that is agreed, it has to have proper protection with green spaces, trees, wildlife. Under my leadership, we've also strengthened the policies on biodiversity, making it a requirement, not an afterthought. I've supported the introduction of new guidance for tree protection measures, backed the rewilding, afforestation for private land. Behind the scenes, I've spent a lot of time actually working directly with landowners, designs, community groups, listening to their knowledge of the land and helping to bring that to the decision-making process. I believe that the best environmental outcomes actually come with working for people, not actually making them do it. I strongly believe that buildings and the environment can actually work together, and it's all about balance. I'm determined that Guernsey meets its climate change goals with real practical action and not just good intentions. I've played a key role in shaping the policies for climate resilience, ensuring the major infrastructure projects like the harbour action areas are guided by those principles of sustainability, climate adaptation and the preservation of the natural environment. As a chartered surveyor, I bring practical experience to these challenges, but above all, I listen to the community. And I am committed to putting the environment at the heart of every decision made in Guernsey, so Guernsey remains a beautiful, thriving place for our future generations. I've supported many more things, but these are just a flavour of what I've done so far, and I will continue to do that.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Deputy Lindsay de Sumray, please.
Thank you. Yes, I am a sitting deputy as well. I've been the president of the Committee for the Environment and Infrastructure for the past 4.5 years. And I've been a member of that committee since it was first created, in fact, in 2016. So it's a mandate that is very, very dear to my heart. And actually, the reason I'm involved in politics at all is because of my background as an environmental activist. I was involved in a number of local campaigns, very successful ones, for example, single-use carrier bags and against the incinerators. And actually, that makes me think that one of the things I'm always most proud of in terms of Guernsey is when I'm asked, which I quite frequently am, to talk about our successful waste strategy, which is actually, I mean, people locally don't really recognise how respected it is on the global stage, but it is held up as an example of best practice internationally. And the secret is the amazing community, you know, that's where it came from. And also it's based on sound environmental principles. And those principles underpin a lot of our good policies. Anyone that was here for the session before will have heard some of our greatest hits, which I've been very closely involved in. Our climate change policy, our energy policy, electricity strategy, strategy for nature, so much renewable energy, transport strategies, school streets, air and water pollution standards. We've done an awful lot this term, and it is really important that we continue to build on those things. Pesticide reduction plan is another thing I'm really proud of. So when it comes to the priorities for the future, which is really why everyone is probably here right now, I think there's some big picture stuff, the climate change, pathway to net zero. The main focus is on transport and housing, joined up planning, and energy, adaptation. Let's not forget our coastal defences. And when it comes to nature as well, the focus has to be on nature recovery. And let's not forget the marine environment as well as terrestrial. Far too much to pack into 2 minutes, but yeah, happy to expand in the next question session.
Perfect, thank you. Tom Moore, please, your 2-minute statement.
Hi, I'm Tom Moore. I believe in making Guernsey fairer, more resilient and more forward-thinking. I believe that our environmental policies should be built around pragmatic action and energy independence. I think we should accelerate developing local renewables, not just the wind farm. It's not just for carbon emission goals. We should look to protect against energy shocks, geopolitical risk, and costly blackouts. Did you know that whenever the power station gets turned on and we burn diesel, that it costs £1 billion a month? Revenue from leasing our seabed should be used to commission tidal power surveys, like the Little Rouxel, for example, constant 5 knots at high tide. I mean, that's not to be sniffed at. On land, we need to prioritise brownfield sites over greenfield. I know there are issues with some brownfield sites, but we should be able to overcome them. We need to protect high biodiversity and green space. We need to protect what we have. Later on, we need to look into developing green hydrogen, which involves desalination. With the surplus energy, hopefully we'll have for producing our own energy. And I have some more ideas about that. Hopefully it will come up later. The UK needs more energy for its GB energy project, and I believe Guernsey should be ploughing into that. The French, however, have found grey hydrogen inland, so yeah, they probably won't want to buy from us. Am I coming close?
10 seconds, yeah.
Oh, right. Interest-free loans for home improvements is part of my manifesto, and we absolutely need to do this, get into the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to Rosemarie Henderson, please, your 2-minute statement.
Hi, I'm Rosie Henderson, and I've got a weird sense of humour, I'm sorry. I think it's very difficult in a very small island to know whether something is true or false. For instance, I had heard a whisper that the 12-mile limit is in danger. If that is the case, then all our thoughts of biodiversity are in danger too. I think we should be listening very carefully to the fishermen, these people that use the sea as their trade, are instrumental in the future. I hear that fishing is not a particularly sustainable practice these days, and a lot of them are going out of business. I do know that as a housewife, it's very difficult to find fresh fish caught in Guernsey. I see fish flown in from all sorts of places. Is that right? I don't think so. I think we should completely be self-sufficient. It's very sad that the co-op decided to get rid of their warehouse at a point because it was, they had £1 million for it. Terrific. We haven't got any storage in Guernsey. There are, as I say, a lot of rumours floating around. In the next states, which I hope to be a part of, I think we ought to concentrate on one thing, get it right and get it going and then go to the next thing.
I'm sorry, I need to cut you off there. That's your 2 minutes, I'm afraid. Thank you very much. Moving on to Andy Livre, please.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Andy Livre. I'm standing as an independent candidate. Just a little bit of history. I've got 37 years as a civil servant, 8 years as a deputy, 4 years as a non-states member, and all of that, nearly all of it, is to do with social welfare issues or social housing. And what you might say, well, that's got a lot to do with green policies. But when you learn that I read it only last night, we are going to need up to 5,000 more properties built over the next 15 years, it suddenly takes on an environmental impact, an enormous one. And we have strategies, we're awash with strategies, such as immigration and building the economy. That's going to be very popular in the election, how we build the economy. And we have a housing strategy as well. And most of these work in a counterproductive manner when pieced together as one. So if you build more, if you build the economy, you're going to bring people in. If you bring people in, you're going to need more houses, and so on and so forth. And all of this takes time. And I think one of the things I wanted to get across tonight is to make people appreciate just why the States is so slow at what it does. Because every issue has counter issues, and it takes a long time to produce change that has real effect. And I use my example as my expertise, as I said, is in housing. It took 18 years to get from one point to another, which proved very successful. But that's a word of warning, so limit your expectations.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to Susie Gallienne, please.
My name is Susie Gallienne, and I'm an independent candidate as well. I say in my manifesto and truly believe that environmental issues must be considered in everything we do. I was at the Mike Berners-Lee talk at the Literary Festival, which underlined for me how urgently we need to act. We have lots of positives to build on, and we've heard a lot about some large-scale initiatives, so I won't cover that again. I would just say that this next Assembly, there will be lots of objections around cost and planning, so the Assembly needs to stand firm against people not understanding the urgency of the situation. Smaller scale initiatives are worth exploring. I'd obviously need to have a chance to look at the evidence for these initiatives being environmentally friendly, as it's often they seem they are and maybe they aren't, so we need to talk about that with experts in the field. But these are just ideas, not scope, but here are 3 such initiatives. I'd like to see a rating system used to rate all states' projects for environmental impact and to be part of tenders, so to give an indication of where changes need to be made for the projects to lower their impact. So that sort of rating system, much like they have for white goods in the shops. I have a second-hand 7-year-old electric car which does 60 to 80 miles to a charge. I'm thinking that in the UK, these short-range cars may be difficult to sell, as newer cars have a 300 to 400-mile range, which is needed in the UK. That's not so here, so possibly creating links that electric cars that can be bought from the UK and sold at low prices, because they couldn't be sold in the UK, might make electric cars more affordable, as mine was, and so more affordable for more people. Possible incentives for active travel. In my experience of a career in health promotion, I know that people will change behaviours if there's an incentive. Companies stamping cards like they do in coffee shops.
10 seconds.
Every time an employee travels from home over half a mile away to work by active travel. Stamps, for example, to be exchanged for something employees would like time off in lieu, perhaps 100 stamps for an extra day off. I look forward to having time, if elected, to research more how we can save ourselves and our environment.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, Deputy Sasha Kazantseva-Miller.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Deputy Sasha Kazantseva-Miller, and actually one of the reasons that I stood for election in 2020 was to support policies that drive more sustainable development. And before joining the States last time, I helped co-found the Chamber of Commerce Sustainable Business Initiative, which is actually still going strong 6 years on, as well as launching a podcast called Transition Islands. And since being elected, I've supported some of the key policies that were driven by environment infrastructure, such as the energy policy, the net zero pathway, and also the wind farm project. But it's actually through my work on the Development and Planning Authority and under the leadership of Deputy Oliver, where we've been able to really drive progress on a number of maybe smaller, less popular, less famous issues, but that have made, I think, a real difference. We are proposing an expansion of the areas of biodiversity protection under the current IDP review. We are requiring now biodiversity improvements when gardens are being extended. We've removed planning barriers to solar panel installation as well as for small air source heat pumps. We've supported small-scale hobby farming by exempting polytunnels and animal shelters from needing permission. We've improved guidance around tree protection orders and also upheld some TPOs recently. We've launched the guidance on bicycle parking for developments to ensure we can support active travel policies. We've supported tree surge in businesses to ensure they could actually operate from a variety of sites. So these are just some of the small examples that show what we can do on a very practical delivery level. And looking ahead, one of the ideas I would like to explore is the introduction of a community infrastructure and biodiversity levy on development, which is taking learnings from the UK model. And this could help us with improving biodiversity offsetting, where this cannot be delivered on the actual development sites. So I think this is just little steps of what we can do on a practical level wherever we are in the states of Guernsey that I would like to continue pursuing. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So that concludes our 2-minute sustainability statements from our candidates tonight. So we're going to move into the Q&A section of this session. And as Blue Marine Foundation are the organisers of the hustings tonight, we're going to start with a marine-focused question, which I'll be asking. And I'll direct it to Deputy Victoria Oliver first. And the question is, what is your opinion on marine protected areas and how they would work for Guernsey? And just a reminder, you'll have 40 seconds to answer, and I will remind you at 10 seconds to go.
I really agree with them, and I think we should have, well, we don't have any at the moment, and I think we should have some. At the moment, we do have the most highest protection on a lot of our coastlines, the SSS land, and that needs to be maintained. But going further afield to the marine, it's so important that we actually look after what we've got in our sea, because the sea actually gives us so much that we just need to treasure.
10 seconds.
Oh, God. And we need to look after it for our future generations, for my children and everyone else's.
Do you need me to repeat the question, Deputy Lindsay, or do you need me?
No, I'm a big fan of MPAs. We are currently working on our marine spatial plan, which is something that's been fortuitously accelerated because of the focus on offshore wind, and that will lead to some marine protected areas. I'm pretty confident of that. And I would say that in plural, and it's important that they are evidence-based and we know what we want to achieve out of them, as was stated in a previous answer on the former panel. But actually, there's a bit of a myth that it's a choice between the economy and the environment. I think this is one of those areas where there are perfect synergies. I think marine protected areas have got, real material economic benefits as well. So actually, if we want to sustain our fisheries going forward, marine protected areas are the best way of doing that. So I think there's huge potential, and I can actually just hopefully calm Rosie's concerns. Any rumours over the 12 territorial miles are not correct. So,
thank you. Okay, Thomas Moore, please.
So thank you very much, Lindsay, for saying that MPAs are on the horizon. That's good to hear. But we do need to think about how we're going to monitor this, and we need to think about enforcement. We need dialogue with the French fishing interests. I think that's going to be the concern here. And I'm going to end this now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Could I ask Rosie Henderson, please? Would you like me to repeat the question, or are you okay? Good for it?
Okay, MPAs. Wonderful idea. I'd fully support it. I know very little about them. I know a little bit about Ramsar sites, but very little about MPAs. So I'll shut up and let somebody else who knows something.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Moving on to Andy Livre, please.
Hi. I don't know. I'm not a green person. I should make that quite clear. Not particularly green, anyhow. But I very much support marine protected areas because I was brought up very close to Belgrave Bay, and I've spent most of my youth on that bay and a lot of my older age in the water in Belgrave Bay spearfishing. So I know all about the life that exists within that bay, and I want to see it protected. I don't want the seagrass beds ripped up. I want everything in the area looked after. And so it should be right round the island for that matter.
Perfect, thank you. Moving on to Susie Gallienne, please.
Well, as a new candidate, I've been wrapping up my other responsibilities so I can work, if elected, as a deputy full-time, which will give me time to do all the research and look at evidence for these for marine protected areas. I must say I don't know at the moment, but what I would say is it makes sense that you need your animals and your fish to be able to grow up and have babies in a protected environment. Otherwise, they'll just get wiped out. So from that point of view, seems good.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, Deputy Sasha Kazantseva-Miller.
You're getting very good at it. So obviously we're an island, so our marine environment is absolutely crucial to our livelihoods. And I think MPA areas can play a very important part in safeguarding our environment, but I think it's crucial that they must be part of the wider marine spatial plan that Deputy de Summers just mentioned. And I think this plan is really essential to balance all the different considerations we've got to take into account, from the environmental protection, the fishing, the renewables, and all sorts of other marine uses. So, and I very much support a science-based approach to ensuring we've got the SLAP, which will be equivalent, we've got the marine spatial plan, which will be equivalent to the strategic land use plan we've got on land.
Okay, perfect, thank you. We're now open to take any questions from the audience, please. Oh, sorry, that's my mistake. Right. Deputy Gavin St. Pierre, your chance to answer the question.
Thank you. I do think they are essential for biodiversity and, of course, climate change mitigation, particularly with the seagrass meadows that we have. And I agree with Lindsay that they are compatible with the economy. I think with the COP15 commitment that we should have 30% by 2030, it's going to be an issue. We are a little bit behind Jersey, so we can learn from Jersey's experience. We've got the UN Oceans Conference coming up around the time of the election. That's an opportunity for us to move into the new term with a commitment to marine spatial areas. And I think it's a great opportunity to talk with the community, the fishermen, the maritime transport and recreational use to get to the right solution.
Perfect, thank you. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Okay, now moving on to take any questions from the audience, please. So yeah, they're right in the front.
Hi, I'm Stuart Jehan, I'm a candidate. What's your stance on tidal power? And if you agree with tidal power, which area would you actually put the generators?
Okay, so what we'll do is move along. So if Deputy Lindsay de Summers is happy to take that first, then we'll go down the row and loop back around. So I'll start the timer now.
Yeah, sure. So I imagine you're talking about tidal stream energy. And there was someone called Jonathan Porritt came over in 2008, and there are members in this audience who will remember this well, and said, Guernsey's got the equivalent of 15 nuclear power stations out there in the Little Rouxel. And we've been waiting, 15 years for this technology, which has been just around the corner. It's an amazing technology. It's got fantastic potential, but it is not yet commercially viable. And we are not a size of jurisdiction that can really support that R&D. But the marine spatial planning work will make sure that we are in exactly the right place as and when it is deployable.
Perfect, thank you.
Well, that completely scuppers my answer, doesn't it? When the right time comes, when it's viable, we need to do a proper review. I'm not going to say Little Rouxel anymore because it really does need to be up to the review as to where the best place is. Done.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Rosie Henderson, you'll go.
Tidal power. I think it's a terrific idea. I'm sorry my colleague believes it's not available yet. I thought it was on stream already. To answer the question, Little Rouxel, Alderney, the Swinge, and there's another one round the other side, equally as strong. I don't see why we haven't tried to
10 seconds.
Invest in it.
Perfect, thank you. Andy Lalive.
Obviously, we're well sited with our tidal streams. I'm very supportive. I like the idea. It sounds very green. But of course, it comes at an expense. And when you talk about commercial things with the states, it starts to get very dodgy. I would like to see the finance package that's going to put it in place really well settled before we go anywhere, because we could end up losing a lot of money. But I'm very supportive of tidal power.
Perfect, thank you. Susie Gallienne.
Again, I haven't yet had a chance to scope this out, but obviously we've got this tidal power. We do need to use it. I absolutely understand from what I have read that technology hasn't been there to make it possible yet. I am not sure whether this is something that we could talk to Jersey around, maybe put it in and sell them electricity rather than France. I'm not sure. But I think that we definitely have to have a forward plan.
10 seconds.
And look to providing this for our children.
Perfect, thank you. Deputy Sasha Kazantseva-Miller.
Thank you. I think just in addition to tidal power, actually, there's different ways to harness the power of waves as well. So I think actually it's a whole suite of potential technologies and innovations that we could be harnessing. I think our energy policy is quite flexible to allow for innovative solutions to come through. Alderney could certainly be a place where some of this test bedding and implementation takes place first. The reality of it, I think we're still years potentially away, and probably to do things well, we need to focus on doing a few things such as wind and solar and do it well, and then see what else comes through.
Perfect, thank you. Deputy Gavin St. Pierre.
Thank you. I think Alderney is an opportunity for us. I was up there a month ago. They have something called the axial skelter sitting at their harbour, which is it looks like a corkscrew that work, very, very simple technology. And they are literally very close to being able to put it in as in a test environment. So I think we should definitely be watching to see how successfully they get on and work with them to develop it at a commercial scale if it's proven in that environment.
Perfect, thank you. Deputy Victoria Oliver, please.
I'm actually desperately waiting to see Alderney's results of their, what I call Shell, because it's such a sort of like a new technology that's come out. And if it's actually viable, it would be great for Guernsey. But there's so many other things, not just the tidal flow, which is what the Shell is, but also buoys, harness the energy from actually just going up and down. And the technology is just starting to come out in a lot of these things. And I think give it a few years that we'll be sort of saying, yep, that's the one we can look at. But you will need to do with the marine studies first before you actually just go sort of changing these things. And that's where the wind will actually provide us with a lot more information.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any more questions from the audience?
Angela Salmon, Guernsey Conservation Volunteers and the Nature Commission. I often use the expression death by 1,000 cuts because I feel that's what's happening to our natural environment and our green spaces, particularly with extensions to domestic curtilage, which can often lead to a loss of biodiversity and then a stepping stone to development. So I'll be interested to know the candidates' comments on the extensions to domestic curtilage that are happening regularly. I would also be interested to know the candidates' comments and ideas on where we're trying to sort of claim back some areas of wilder land, such as the Grand Rock restoration project.
Okay, great. So just to clarify, you want to know candidates' opinions on extensions to domestic curtilage and the claiming back of wildlands, particularly around Grand Rock? Perfect. Okay, so if we could start with Thomas Moore, please.
Well, what a question for me to answer first. I was hoping to bounce off other people. Drat. So we need to be very careful, basically. If we cannot rehouse biodiverse populations, then we should be erring on the side of caution and perhaps leaving well alone. We need to have regulation in place to make sure that certain landlords and so on, whoever wants to expand their domestic curtilage, complies whenever we say, no, please stop.
Perfect. Thank you. Rosie Henderson, please.
I think the extension of domestic curtilage is an anathema, or alternatively, I'm dead against it. I always get surprised when I write yet again to the States and say I object to such and such doing so and so. So that's my view. It shouldn't happen.
10 seconds.
I think it's difficult about rewilding or conserving areas of land because when it's been used by a plant that is invasive, it isn't always suitable for plants we want to put there.
Sorry, Rosie, I need to stop you there. Okay, moving on to Andy Livre, please.
The Grand Rock car park issue, it cuts both ways. It's if you stop people parking where, I mean, it's shrunk in size, and my wife's always complaining there's nowhere to park her car when we go to the beach. And we use Grand Rock all the time. It is the family beach. In fact, some of the rocks are named after our family, believe it or not, thanks to my son-in-law. I don't like the idea of pushing people out of our car parks because they will park somewhere, and if it's on grass or whatever, they will do it. The other thing is I don't agree with the housing increases in garden curtilage or whatever it's called. And I noticed on the press recently there have been one or two cases where they've been turned down.
Sorry,
I'm pleased to see it, hear it.
Great, thank you. Susie Gallienne, please.
Nobody needs a bigger garden. I'm sorry, that's just not a need. And I do think that this needs to be tightened up. I think maybe it's related to the fact that land is so expensive now that and people with enlarging their houses and then finding their gardens too small and then trying to move into the fields. I think that should be an absolute. Nobody can do that, which I think was the case a few years ago, but it seems to have slipped now. So I am absolutely against it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Deputy Sasha Kazantseva-Miller, please.
So the extension of domestic curtilage, it's exactly something we got caught on to early on in the political term at planning, because we saw applications coming for thousands of square foot of change of use applications. And what we brought, we don't have a biodiversity net gain provisions in Guernsey, but what we said, if you were going to apply for change of use, you would have to demonstrate actual biodiversity improvements to what you were doing. So we've tried to, within what we had, to put those, and actually, if you look at the applications that have been approved, they have shown improvements to biodiversity, so that change in supplementary guidance we introduced.
Perfect, thank you. Deputy Gavin Pierre, please.
Thank you. Yes, death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, clearly prevention is far better than recovery in terms of trying to deal with biodiversity loss. So I do see it as the extension of domestic curtilage as being primarily a planning and enforcement issue. In terms of recovery, I mean, the work that you guys do in terms of removal of sour fig and so on to help that invasive species is amazing. And I think where we do have the opportunities to allow recovery, absolutely we should be supporting that as the government.
Perfect, thank you. Deputy Victoria Oliver, please.
Thank you. It's similar to what Deputy Kazantseva-Miller said. At the beginning of the term, we saw lots of large fields just disappearing to domestic curtilage. And we wanted to actually put a stop to that, but we couldn't just say no unless we had a full planning review. So we actually made them have a biodiversity net gain. And we don't have that over here, but they had to prove that they did have one. And we've seen, just by putting that barrier, that we've actually seen a lot less come forward, which was what we actually wanted to do. But the ones that have come forward are a lot better. Recovery, I'm all for offsetting, where you've got development to actually put more in. And also some of the places actually need just recovery, and they're only small sort of like areas, and they're only small tweaks that you have to do to actually let the environment actually come back.
Perfect, thank you. Deputy Lindsay de Summary, please.
Okay, great work. We worked with the DPA on that, on the domestic curtilage, and that's great. But I think there is still a loophole there where people apply to extend domestic curtilage, then develop a little building, and then it actually opens up a potential gateway to larger development. It's fundamentally important that we build and we develop, especially homes, etc., which there's so much pressure for, in the right place in the first place. That is the number one thing, speaking to Gavin's point about prevention being better than cure. Biodiversity net gain is in fact agreed in principle, so we're working on the framework now. And when it comes to Grand Rock, that was never a car park. That is a site of special scientific significance. But actually, projects like eCar, etc., show what can be done when we put the right resources in to recover nature properly.
Perfect, thank you. Any more questions from the audience, please?
Hi. The Chamber of Commerce, IOD, AGC call themselves the G8, and they've come up with the Voice of Guernsey Business Insight report, which is quite detailed. It's got quite a lot of coverage. It's got 6 major policy objectives, but there's no mention at all of environmental factors in that report. What's your views on that?
Okay, perfect. Just to clarify as well, this will be our last question for this session. And we'll start with Rosie Henderson, please.
What a good question. Shame I don't have a good answer. I think it's a great pity that they didn't see fit to have any mention of biodiversity or the sea or anything. But there is going to be, I'm going to advertise somebody else's thing, but there's going to be a luncheon, I believe, on Friday at the OGH. I'm sure you'll hear a lot more there, and I shall be there too.
Perfect, thank you. Andy Livre, please.
Well, it's a great shame that they didn't include any items to do with biodiversity, but it doesn't surprise me. People say things, and quite frankly, they don't take any note. They don't mean them. So we have to be very clear as to what they mean. Now, some of the answers have been given tonight are understated insofar, especially by Deputy de Summary, because she is unaware. When I was a youngster, I used to swim through brown water in Belgrave Bay because of the amount of pollution. The new strategies have resulted in clean water. It's absolutely brilliant. So I'm all for policies which, go along this path.
Can I wrap you up there, please? Thank you. Susie Gallienne, please.
Thinking about this report, which I haven't read, the Chamber of Commerce are putting forward the business view on things, and potentially this was not a priority for them to include in their 6 things, but has anybody put that to them? Or I think that the next step would be for us environmental groups to go forward and say this was missing in your report and make it something that we make them feel that needs to be included in everything. My view is that environmental issues should be part of every single policy that goes through the states and make a culture change so that business considers those as well.
Perfect, thank you. Deputy Sasha Kazantseva-Miller, please.
I think there's two ways to look at it. I think, first of all, it probably shows that there are some real challenges our community is facing today around housing, connectivity, public finances, that as a small government, just to sort them out will take all of our time to do it properly. And so I think they do really reflect the really day-to-day issues that people are facing. But on the other side, it doesn't mean that environmental considerations wouldn't be taken into account when we build homes, when we are trying to improve our connectivity. So to me, environmental considerations should be part and parcel of everything we're doing. It doesn't have to be just a separate thing. Actually, it's the underlying principles of guiding all decision-making that we will be taking.
Perfect, thank you. Deputy Gavin St. Pierre, please.
Thank you. It doesn't surprise me. It mirrors really the experience that we had when we were similarly surveying opinion, which is very much focused on the immediate priorities, as Sasha said, that are pressing on people day to day. But I think it is the responsibility of politicians to take the lead and also to make the case for the fact that it's not incompatible. You know, having a decent on-island transport strategy, having marine protection areas, does not mean that the economy is going to go down the pan. So that is responsibility to lead, and that, as I said, is one of the reasons why climate transition became a priority for Forward Guernsey.
Perfect, thank you. Deputy Victoria Oliver, please.
Thank you. I'm not surprised at all with all the other priorities that people foresee. But one thing that I've sort of learnt in my time as the DPA president is that the environmental should be actually working for you. And not against you. And everything that you do within business, there comes an element of environment. You've got green finance, impact investment. Flooding is such a major issue in Guernsey that we need to look at that. And it's just surprising that they don't take it more seriously.
Perfect, thank you. Deputy Lindsay de Sumray, please.
I would challenge the premise of the question, actually, because I don't think you can disaggregate the environmental considerations from any of the things in that report. They are absolutely foundational when you think about issues like energy, transport, housing, climate. These are all absolutely foundational to our economy, and we take ecosystem services for granted at our economic peril. So you cannot disaggregate them. The environmental considerations are absolutely fundamental to a healthy economy and, in fact, our quality of life and our health and all the reasons that we love being in Guernsey. So actually, I think it is in there.
Perfect, thank you. Thomas Moore, please.
I regret to say that this report didn't come up in my research for this event, so I couldn't possibly comment.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for our candidates. That concludes our Q&A session for this session. We're going to have a short break now for about 20 minutes, and there's tea and coffee and refreshments in the refectory for everyone to help themselves.
The evening format is as follows. The candidates will be given 2 minutes to state their priorities with regards to the environment. And that will be followed by 30 minutes of audience question and answers, for which there are 40 seconds, which is not very long. We'll ask for questions from the audience afterwards. And if you could frame your questions concisely, please, so that they are clear and easily appreciated by the panel. And it might be that we need to ask you to rethink the question, and we'll come back to you at that time. The moderation is going to be strict on timing for obvious reasons, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. So we're going to start off by introducing the candidates. They are from the far right. That's my right, your left. Good point. At the far end of the table, there is Tom Rylatt, there is Sarah Hansmann Rouxel, there is Deputy Yvonne Burford, there is Paul Montague, Deputy Simon Fairclough, Levan Katwyk, and Deputy Neil Inder. So we'll start off with the 2-minute statement giving the priorities for the environment. And Tom, if If you would like to start, please.
Good evening, everyone. As you just heard, my name's Tom Rylatt. I'm one of the Forward Guernsey candidates. So thank you all very much for coming this evening and for the invite as well. I would just lead by saying I am by no means an expert on the environment or sustainability. If I'm elected, my approach is very much going to be led by experts such as some of yourselves in the audience and to be led by the evidence. But this is a topic that's incredibly important to me because the only reason I'm able to call myself a Guernsey local is because of our high environmental standards. So just after World War I, my great-grandfather had sustained lung damage through gassing and some of the fighting. And his UK doctor said to him, you need to go and live somewhere with the highest possible air quality standards. And he gave him a list of places. And being the sensible man he was, he picked Guernsey in that list. And he moved his family and his life over here. Now, we now have to make sure that the opposite of that story doesn't start happening. So people don't feel the need to move their lives away or their businesses away because of degradation to the environment. When I was 18 years old, I helped co-found Future Generations, which was the island's first youth-led climate change awareness group, where we undertook to lobby deputies and to educate school children on climate change awareness and on local biodiversity. In terms of policy priorities, as part of Forward Guernsey, obviously we're committed to helping accelerate the wind farm project for all of the good reasons that I'm sure have been well litigated tonight. So energy independence in a volatile market, employment opportunities, progress towards net zero, etc. But in terms of personal priorities as well, I also work for the Guernsey Development Agency, so we are in charge of laying out the plans for redevelopment of the East Coast. We are really trying hard to interweave green projects along with our high concept plans for the East Coast. So sustainable transport, new green areas and protection of marine life. And these are the things that I would like to try and enable and push through if I am elected.
Thank you. Excellent timing. Spot on. Sarah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hansmann Rouxel. I was a member of the Committee for Environment and Infrastructure in the 2016 to 2020 era of the States. And at the time, I saw deeply how the environment is connected to everything that we do, from health to housing to transport to tourism. But I also often saw how environmental policies are met with resistance, framed as costly or inconvenient. And personally, I think that's a false economy. Too often we waste energy debating whether we can afford environmental action when we should be asking, what is the cost of no action? And for me, sustainability is a no-brainer because environmental policy done right doesn't limit growth, it enables it. It is not about going without, it's about doing things smarter, finding those creative solutions, things that we haven't been able to do before, and capitalizing on the technological advances that we can actually implement now. We do need to stop seeing the environment and the economy as being in conflict. And my background in improvisation taught me a core principle. Make your partner look good. It's a mindset of collaboration. Why won't this work? Instead, asking the question, how can we make this work? How can we work together to get this done? And that's the kind of thinking I'll bring to the States. Guernsey is uniquely placed. We live in an extraordinary environment with the sea on our doorstep. We have fertile land and a close-knit community. We have the potential to be a blueprint for how a small island can lead on sustainability. And that means investing in nature-based solutions, building greener homes, protecting biodiversity, and supporting clean energy. And our environment shouldn't just survive, it should thrive. And with the right leadership, so can we.
Thank you. To the next one, Yvonne, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Yvonne Burford. I've championed the environment throughout my time in public service and community work, including steering the very first biodiversity strategy through the States in 2015. I served as president of La Société, helping obtain the original funding for their education officers, and I hold a master's degree in renewable energy and sustainable construction. Protecting our island's unique habitats and species is not just an environmental issue. It's a social issue and an economic issue that will define the quality of life for generations to come. The recent State of Nature report shows that in the last quarter of a century, we've lost 2/3 of our natural terrestrial habitats, a truly shocking statistic. Many native species are in decline due to habitat loss, climate change, and invasive species. As an island, our ecosystems are especially vulnerable, and data gaps show that we need to invest in better monitoring, research, and data gathering to guide our actions. The Strategy for Nature is a vital framework for addressing these trends through connecting people to nature, restoring habitats, and embedding the issue of biodiversity into every decision we make as a community. My priorities are clear. I will push for robust implementation of the Strategy for Nature. This means supporting habitat restoration, creating and strengthening protections for our most precious wild spaces on land and at sea, and promoting nature-friendly farming, land management and gardens. It also means investing in citizen science, education and community engagement so that everyone can contribute. I'm also committed to our net zero pathway because clean energy, sustainable transport and resilient infrastructure are all part of a healthy and thriving island. The states must work with and support third sector organisations to help ensure Guernsey's natural heritage is protected, restored and cherished for our children and for the future of our island home.
Thank you. And to Paul.
Good evening, my name is Paul Montague. I've been teaching philosophy here for the last 30 years, considering making the move from philosophy to politics. And I find that as I've done that, and I've been looking into this, underlying everything that I've looked at is the need for rational decision-making, pragmatism and evidence-based decisions. In terms of priorities, if we're going to answer the question like a good student, the first four will say clean energy. We're making good progress on that. One of the things that will cause us problems there is, of course, the very poor quality infrastructure, our electrical services. I believe there are 870 miles of electrical cabling going on, largely under Guernsey's roads, and a lot of that's going to need to be renewed, so a lot of roadworks to look forward to. Biodiversity protection, water and waste resilience and sustainable transport hopefully will pick up in the questions, but I'm going to just focus on two areas. And they're both, in a sense, quite negative. One thing is what we do to enhance nature and protect it, but we've got to accept as well that in terms of climate change, we've already pulled the trigger. Things are going to get worse, and so it is the responsibility of government to really prepare for periods of drought and periods of extreme storm. And so that's something that we need to do. And of course, as I was talking to someone just a moment ago, that's going to rely on the island being in a far more better financial situation than it currently is. I'm going to finish off with something about public engagement. Well done for you guys and all your bicycles out there, but not many people in the room. Whenever I had to teach about environmental ethics, it was always a hard sell with youngsters. I think it's a hard sell with members of the public as well. And I really think we do need to really drive scientific literacy. When we've had people online in Guernsey saying, oh, I've done my research. And what that meant with regard to climate change is they found an article on the internet that chimed in with their own bias. We've really got to drive up the standards of scientific literacy. And we've got to get youngsters out into nature. Last December, we took 20 students to pick up some sow fig on a wet, breezy, nasty December afternoon. They didn't enjoy it at the time, but I spoke to them this morning. They all remembered that, and they will understand as a result of that biodiversity and why we need to do something about it.
Thank you. And to the next one, which is Simon.
Thanks, Brian. Very good evening to you. My name is Deputy Simon Fairclough, and I'm a member of the Committee for Environment and Infrastructure. My priorities for the environment would be as follows. On energy, to prioritise the work that's being done to develop offshore wind, continuing the work set out in the E&I's electricity strategy. But, unpopular opinion, this will need more resources. We currently have about 1.5 staff working on this massive and vitally important piece of work. On nature conservation, we need to prioritise the introduction of robust wildlife and habitat protection laws. I would like to see continued support for the excellent work of the Nature Commission, and that done by the third sector organisations which are working on the front line to protect and enhance our natural environment. With regards to the marine environment, greater protection of our coastlines. For example, sustainable fisheries will help to ensure our marine ecosystems remain diverse and resilient and provide a long-term and viable fishing industry. And back on land, a requirement for EIAs to be carried out by suitably qualified independent ecologists, as this is something that's not happening at present. More triple S's rather than the current ABIs should be considered as part of a review of our planning policies and laws to strengthen protection of our natural assets. And more thought be given to the recognition of wildlife corridors to link our unique habitats. It's easy to say all these things, but to achieve them will require a collective will across committees and in the states next term, but it is possible. These and other environmental initiatives just have to be given higher priority from early on in the new term. The clock is ticking. Thank you.
The clock is ticking. Good. And next to Lee.
Thank you all for being here this evening and showing some faith in our democracy. My name is Livre and Katwyk, and my family has been involved in recycling on the islands for generations. My father, his father, and his father's father owned Guernsey's scrap recycling facility, which then became Guernsey Recycling and Mayside Recycling, both of which I worked at as a younger man. I have been fortunate to work as a kayak guide, a wakeboard and scuba instructor internationally, and also set up and run a successful business in Hong Kong, taking kids out of the classroom and getting them engaged with nature. My wife and I we've just bought a small Guernsey cottage, and we're excitedly expecting our first child. I'm very passionate about ensuring that our land and marine habitats and biodiversity continue to thrive for future generations. I'd like to see our hedgerows protected, our grasslands being used for wildflowers, and charities like the Nature Commission being given the support to get us the data that we need. And I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It doesn't work that you get the extra time. So thank you. For the next one, that is Neil Linder.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting the event in the very first instance, anyway. My name is Neil Linder. I'm a deputy. I'm also the president of Economic Development. The original environmental movement told us two things. There are too many people on the planet, and they also told us to stop consuming. And as someone from that era, I still subscribe to those basic principles. 20 years ago, we bought our home with a derelict finery site. The first thing I did, much to the annoyance of my wife, was to clear the remaining glass, plant the whole site with native trees, reseed, and have ensured that no chemicals whatsoever have been used on the property in that period. It is now a haven for wildlife, and particularly hedgerow birds, and this winter I actually saw my first firecrest, which I was quite excited about. I drive an electric car. I generally drive motorbikes. I've installed a 5 kilowatt array of solar panels on the property, and we generate 5 megawatts of energy per year, most of which I use. I'm conscious of my carbon footprint and rarely travel on personal or government business, and certainly not to Jersey. I'm the environmentalist that doesn't feel the need to talk about himself. He just wants to get on with it, and there are many of us about. In terms of policy shaping, my views are really quite simple. Every new build roof in Guernsey should have solar panels, and it should be mandatory. It's as simple as that. Vinery sites should not be housing targets. We should turn them back into fields or open areas. Every vinery site in Guernsey has a field sitting under it. States members should account for their travels and act by example. You can't spend public money on multiple trips for a few days
10 seconds.
And claim you have the environment at your heart. There should be more support for groups like Guernsey Conservation Volunteers because they do such a great job returning Sourfic areas to nature. I hope that gives you a flavour of my general position. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that's the first phase. We move to the next phase now, which is the question and answer. The event is hosted this evening by Blue Marine Foundation, and they've posed the first question. So each candidate will have 40 seconds in turn to answer the question. The question is, what is your opinion on marine protected areas and how do you think they'll work for Guernsey? What is your opinion on marine protected areas, and how do you think they'll work for Guernsey? And Sarah, if you'd like to start, please.
Thank you. So obviously, I do support the implementation of marine protected areas. As was said before by Deputy Lindsay de Summeret, the marine spatial plan is almost out there, and we need the information in order to know where the marine protected areas need to be. Obviously, by having that broader strategy,
10 seconds.
we gain the information in order to see where those bits are. So absolutely, we need to do it, and we need the information in order to implement them in the right places.
Thank you. And the next one says Yvonne. Thank you.
Thank you. Robust marine protected areas, in the plural, are vital if we want to safeguard our marine environment. And the first step has been mentioned is to complete a marine spatial plan, which is kind of an island development plan for the sea, if you like. Fortunately, this is a prioritised work stream, also accelerated by the work that's being done on the wind farm, and it's due out by the end of next year. And this will provide the framework for marine protected areas for breeding grounds and sensitive habitats. And it balances conservation with sustainable fishing and other uses, making it good for the natural environment and good for the economy.
Seconds. Oh. Well, within the time. So the next one is Paul.
There's a real desire to say something different. So we've talked a lot about what's good about them. Just a couple of kind of warnings. First of all, when we do launch these things, there needs to be genuine local stakeholder involvement. We need to make sure we get people on board and explain that to the Guernsey's fishing community. And it's a supremely important part of our culture and tradition that if we don't look after fish stocks, there will be no fishing in the future. Enforcement and monitoring is going to cost money, and there are going to be problems with that. There's real jurisdictional complexity about how we overview it, and they don't need to be all designed the same way. You can have complete ones or partial ones, so one size doesn't fit all.
Thank you. And next is Simon.
I think marine protected areas could work for Guernsey. I think it's something we would have to work with the other islands on. For me, there aren't enough protections in place for the bailiwick's marine environment, with threats coming from disturbance, a lack of knowledge, invasive non-native species, exploitation of marine resources and pollution. So far, the international importance of Guernsey's marine ecology has only been recognised by the designation of 2 Ramsar sites at Lihu and Herm, and that's not enough.
10 seconds.
So MPAs could be considered further as we progress our blue economy supporting plan.
Thank you. Over to you, Lee.
Yeah, absolutely want to see marine protected areas around Guernsey, but we need to see the research done first, the areas that can be of most importance, breeding grounds for local species, so that we can explain to sea fisheries that this will have a good benefit on you in the future. Education is really important before we get these areas into place, but absolutely support MPAs and getting the research done.
10 seconds. Thank you. And to Neil.
The fishing industry, as we know it, is fast becoming a heritage industry. Most of the captains of the vessels are at the wrong end of the age, and it's a very expensive place to start up. So that is a statement of fact. I think the opportunity is today. Now we move away from heavy commercial fishing. So I fully support it. We probably should have done set-aside areas years ago. We didn't get round to do it. So in short, I'm fully supportive of it as we move to a different sea-based economy. Thank you.
Thank you. And to Tom.
Well, there's not a lot of ground left to cover there. No, I agree with what Paul said, though. We do need to take people with us. when we are making decisions like this, so people people feel as though decisions are being made with them and not above them. I completely support MPAs. You know, there was a World Economic Forum that said in the countries that have implemented them, in 2/3 of those countries, there's been benefits to commercial fisheries and to tourism. And as Deputy Inder said, with the state of our current fishing industry, I don't see why we wouldn't do that, to both use it as an economic driver and to protect endangered species and marine biodiversity.
Thank you. Okay, so now we move to questions from the floor. If you'd raise a hand, please, and one of the ladies with the microphone will come around. So the lady in the white shirt, white blouse.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming this evening. As background, I'm a loss adjuster and deal with insurance claims. And what we frequently find is the level of products that are purchased. So when we go along to a claim, it could be the fact that the policyholder doesn't know that what they're buying is cheap, it's not durable, will not last them very long. So the only regulation I believe at the moment is on the building regs is for insulation. So is there not a way where regulations can be put in place for the building industry where when stocks are purchased, they buy certain level of materials, certain quality of materials? That one thing Yvonne said about sustainable construction, that when properties are built, you don't just build it to a basic level. For example, with our water levels and our water pressure, at the time the property is built, say the water pressure is 4 bar, that's fine. But if you have a burst water main, when you go to reconnect the water, it goes up to 10 bar, so you have a flood in your property. So I think there's more that can be done to improve our method of construction, the materials we use, the durability of the materials that we use, and also the availability, say bamboo instead of oak, accoya trees, for example. Is there any, in your future, looking at building regulations and how, again, if we buy less, we waste less. If we look at how we're building, we have less energy waste and we reduce our carbon footprint.
So
the question is, by enhancing building regulations, can we improve the quality of our construction industry, resulting in better structures and less escaping of energy, therefore reducing your energy emissions?
Thank you. Yvonne, you're starting this one.
Very long and deep and complex issue you've raised there. I'm totally with you on the need for using sustainable materials which are ultimately recyclable. And there are examples of buildings which are made from almost entirely recyclable materials, so that really, if the time comes for the building to be demolished, it can just go without having really left much in the way of a carbon footprint at all. I think the implementation and the trying to do that, making it a requirement to do that,
10
if I'm
seconds.
totally honest, is much, much harder. There are some things that are possible. That planning can mandate certain materials are used. But yes, all the time we ought to be working towards that circular economy.
Thank you. Paul.
Yeah, I'm just overcoming my PTSD because in 2012 I was on holiday and I got a call that my house flooded because of cheap equipment. But yeah, absolutely. I think what Deputy Burford said is exactly right. It's very hard to enforce those things, but once again, we drive the idea of education about sustainability. Just to finish off, I was teaching the other day, and one of the original blackboards in the grammar school is still working. It's still fine. The surface is perfect because it was bought well and it's lasted that time. All the new whiteboards we've used are rubbish. And actually try and tell the youngsters, buy well, don't waste money.
Thank you. And to Simon.
Thank you, and thanks for the question. Interestingly, the States, when one of its last sittings passed the Pathway to Net Zero policy letter, that's a 7-year phase of work, and there is a lot of ambition in it. One of those ambitions is a review of building control to support improvements in building standards, noting the UK's future homes standard. I think a lot more could be done in that area. The other thing that's being considered is the introduction of energy performance certificates. So I think those two things, this is something that will be considered. One of the problems we got, though, is we've got a lot of old housing that we need to retrofit things to.
Thank you. And to Neil. Sorry, Lee. Sorry, Lee.
I think we have to be careful when we're talking about building new houses. We've got to make sure that we're giving affordable options for our island's youth. It's all very well saying buy once. What did you say?
Buy once, buy well.
Buy once, buy well. But if it's too expensive for our island's youth, then they're not going to be able to do that. So I do want to see incentives for using these better materials that are going to last longer, have a good impact on our environment, but not at the cost of affordable housing.
10 seconds.
And one of the issues our building industry is decrying at the moment is too much red tape. So I wouldn't want to see adding any more.
Thank you. And to Neil.
Deputy Fairclough answered the question regarding the changes to the building standards, so I think I don't need to repeat that. What I am a fan of, concrete, I think it accounts for something like 8% of our carbon footprint. We do too much of knocking stuff down to build stuff up again. I know it's more expensive to retrofit, but it feels to me a lot better. We too easily knock buildings down, dump a lot of it in the sea.
10 seconds.
And put the same stuff back up. So in short, I'm sort of siding with you, but I was trying to introduce another topic badly.
Thank you. Okay. And to Tom.
Yeah, and annoyingly, I agree with a lot of what's just come before. But in the previous session, we talked about the target of building 5,000 homes in the next 15 years. That's a lot of home to build. So being able to do that in the most sustainable way possible is obviously ideal. We have to balance that and I think be pragmatic against the need for housing to be built now. You know, we are in an emergency essentially. So it's a balance, but I'm absolutely on board with it. I'm also very much on board with energy performance certificates. I've practiced landlord and tenant law in the UK, and obviously that's a condition of every tenancy. And seeing those in practice and seeing the better average quality of standard of housing because of that and their sustainability has shown me I think it's something we need to implement in short order here.
Thank you. And to Sarah.
Thank you. Again, a lot's been said. I agree with the whole concept of the circular economy. I think something that hasn't been mentioned is there are barriers to understanding what's happening in the construction industry because it is so dispersed. And yes, we don't have the regulations and we don't have the building standards that we could. And a lot of the tension comes from the cost of building. So I think some of the work that has been done, again, by the President of Environment and Infrastructure is going out there and speaking to the construction side and finding out what those barriers are. And along with understanding those barriers and bringing the cost down and being realistic about the cost, building the standards and the cost together with the industry is how you progress that piece of work.
Thank you. And a second question, please. In the front, thank you.
Do you believe that the natural environment underpins our economy? I can have a simple yes or no, or...
No, please don't have yes or no, more than that. This is for Paul to start.
Me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I think someone said something very important earlier, and often we see it as an either or. You either have the economy or you have the environment. There are so many examples around the world of where the environment has driven economic gains. The green economy does work so well. The circular economy works so well in so many areas. So I think you're right to answer that question. I think that there's a very positive link between the two. The other thing I would say about maintaining our natural environment to a very high standard is I believe it's very important for mental health. I believe we've got youngsters who are spending far too much time indoors and not enough time outdoors, and we need to do everything we can to get them out enjoying Guernsey's wonderful nature.
Thank you. And next is Simon.
I'm going to do a very rare thing and answer a closed question to a politician with a one-word answer, yes.
great.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Lee.
Yeah, absolutely. The environment is very important and underpins our economy. If we're not looking after the environment, like we've got with sea level rises coming up now, 4 millimetres a year at the moment and accelerating, we're going to have 0.5 metre in 50 years. We are going to have more troubles if we don't look after the environment today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Neil?
I'm going to say yes. I'd love to caveat that, but I can't. But part of our responsibility will be population. I genuinely believe the population experiment is over in Guernsey. Sustainable growth in the economy is important. And I genuinely believe that the next states need to have a conversation about putting a cap on the population, because the more we expand the population in the island, the less nature you are going to have.
Thank you. And to Tom?
Again, yes, completely agree. I'll just use one example. The work we're doing at the GDA on flood defences at the minute as mitigation, that will be a huge economic enabler both for development in St Sampson and St Peter Port. And without flood defences, without keeping our marine biodiversity, without keeping our natural biodiversity, it will all slowly begin to fall apart from under us. So it's a yes.
Okay, thank you. And to Sarah?
Yeah, as you would have gathered from my opening statement, I absolutely believe it does underpin the economy, and it's actually vital. Social and environmental policies make up how you can actually get the economy working and stop having this tension between them. They're not. It's a symbiosis, and until we actually start making that work, we're not going to really capitalise on what we actually have and manage to build it back up.
Thank you. And to Yvonne.
Thank you. Yes, obviously it does, but it's not just it underpins the economy, it underpins the whole of society. And taken to the extreme, it's quite simple that with no environment, if we lose pollinators, if all of these things happen, then ultimately, there is no food, there's no people, there's nothing. We do need to look after our economy. I mean, that is taking it to an extreme, I understand. But yes, it underpins the economy, it underpins society, and we need to look after it, because if we don't, then that's at our peril.
Thank you. Okay, so that's everyone's gone through there, yes? Yes, so we're on to another question. Put the question here, please. Thank
you. Do you think there's a traffic congestion problem on the island? And if so, what are your solutions?
That's nice and concise. Traffic congestion and solutions as a question. And this is Simon starting this one.
Yes, I do, but I won't give a one-word answer to this one, Barry. The solutions are the harder part. Trying to force people out of their vehicles, we've seen how the community feel about that. I think what we need to do and continue to need to do, we've done a fair bit this term under environment and infrastructure, is provide better options for people, better bus services. There are more people using the buses than ever before. More people are cycling than ever before. You only needed to go down the front on Liberation Day to see how many people are on their bikes. So we have to make it easier to make better journeys available for people.
Thank you. And to Lee?
I mean, we do have an issue with traffic congestion, but I think the island is heading in the right direction. We're seeing more people using their bikes, more people using their buses, but what we're not seeing is the infrastructure put in place to help that all run smoothly. So whilst we do have a problem with traffic, I'd like to see more incentives again for people to buy electric bikes. It's a hard time at the moment for people, so if we can incentivize that and put the infrastructure in place to enable the bikes to move around the island without inhibiting cars so much, I think that's where we need to keep going from here.
Thank you. And to Neil?
I think it's pretty obvious what's been happening. As someone who hangs around cafes a lot, normally on the coast, what you're seeing is people diverting from the centre of the island and using the coastal path. So it's not just about congestion, it's use of cars. The solution I'm unsure of, but the only thing I would posit to most of you, and someone who's ridden a motorbike most of his life, electric cars, great. Electric bikes, great. Walking, great. But I really would like to see more use of motorcycles.
10 seconds.
Thank you.
You? Done? That's good. And to Tom?
Yes. One of my colleagues said that we have a similar relationship with cars as Americans do to guns, which makes finding solutions quite tricky. But in terms of the seafront, again, the East Coast is a good example. What we're trying to do is set up transport hubs in St Sampson and St Peter Port with hopefully mini electric buses that can shuttle back and forth every 6 minutes so that we make public transport the norm and not the exception across the seafront. We're also trying to build in cycle lanes for the Blacklock land reclamation. Again, so sustainable transport is a massive part of East Coast redevelopment and again should be the norm.
Thank you. And to Sarah?
Yes, so we do actually have a integrated transport strategy that underpins a lot of these things, but no real funding or the levers were all taken away from that. And as a result of that, we don't actually have the capital to do the big infrastructure projects that will make a difference to help people make those better choices. So things have been done incrementally in small little bits where we can.
10 seconds.
The next piece of work is capitalising on those bigger projects and making sure that when we're doing new planning, we are actually getting the infrastructure in place for people to have those choices.
And to Yvonne?
Yes, of course we have a traffic problem. And as a member of the then Environment Committee in 2014, I brought a minority report on the integrated transport strategy because I didn't feel the main report was sufficiently robust. The minority report was passed. We then had 2,000 people protesting about wanting to do things about their cars on North Beach. I bear the scars. That said, my views are unchanged on this matter. We need to carry on working. One of the key things, this has already been said, is actually making it easier for people to make the right choices. You know, you can't beat people into it. More school streets, as in St Martin's, and continuing to implement the transport strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another question? I'm sorry, Paul.
You're always picking on me, Brian. So here's something I will say now amongst you people, but not on Guernsey People Have Your Say. I'm a cyclist. I don't have much problem with traffic. I just cycle past it. It's not being recorded, this, is it? But here's what I'm going to say. I think we need more one-way roads with cycling contraflows. I think we need to look at paid parking and making sure that if you have an office car parking space, it's a benefit in kind that gets taxed. I think we should get more electric cycles on the road. I've been cycling for years and years and years. I used to hate being overtaken by an electric bike. Now I love it because the more cycles we get on the road, the safer it'll get for everyone. So I'm sorry, that's the way ahead. Thanks for the question.
10 seconds. Thank you, Paul. And apologies.
Because you left me late. Just remember, you're not stuck in traffic, you are traffic. That's what we always tell our youngsters at school.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. So now is another question. In the back over here.
So, candidates, what do you feel the energy production, green energy production opportunities are for the island? What can households do to play their part? What incentives can the government do to allow them to do that? And how can we afford it all? Feel from me if you want.
Candidates, it's green energy. So we're starting with Lee.
Yeah, I'd like to see big corporations taking the brunt of the pay for our green energy. It's exciting to see what's going on in Alderney with the screw technology, the tidal technology there. But I'd like to see our states thinking creatively as well. Why can't we have solar panels over the car parks in town, giving us shade, producing energy, sending it back over to France and cutting people's energy bills? So yeah, very excited to see what happens with green energy. I don't think we should put the price onto everyday people.
10 seconds.
We should insensitize solar panels going on roofs, but we shouldn't expect people to pay the price.
Thank you. Neil?
Didn't realise I was given a candidate his policies, but I'll give it a go.
Okay.
I think I said when I opened here that I genuinely believe part of the economic growth of this island has to be sustainable, and part of that has got to be solar energy. I'll repeat again. I'm in the same position I was for a very long time. There isn't a roof in Guernsey, with the exception of the odd one which sits under a tree and facing the wrong way, that shouldn't have a percentage of its roof
10
covered in
seconds.
solar panels. And it's as simple as that. That is an industry in itself. Thank you.
Thank you. And to Tom?
Yeah, no, I think it's an admirable cause. I'm always wary of schemes where, giving money for, for people to put solar panels on their roof, because often to make it economically viable, you're only giving so much money to someone who can probably already afford it and not making it affordable enough for, middle to lower income households. But I think incentives could also be making active travel, for example, more accessible and safer. So things like expanding the Tranquil network, giving it status in law, setting incentives like that to holistically make it more accessible to people.
Thank you. And to Sarah.
I'll get to the crux of the question, which was at the end, which was how do we pay for it all? And I go back to my opening statement where I said, well, if you think about it, what is the cost in not doing it? What is the cost in not seeing it? And if we look at the investment in terms of what's the cost for future generations if we don't put in sustainable energy now, that equation suddenly becomes
10 seconds.
Far more sustainable. So yes, we do need to look at things like community arrays and getting people to collectively do that, and that resolves the issue that Tom raised.
Thank you. And to Yvonne.
Thank you. I'm going to start my answer by giving a plug to another candidate, which is Deputy Lindsay de Summary, who has done an extraordinary amount of work on these kind of things in this term. And the one that's relevant here is the electricity strategy, which shows us how to go forward on green energy. And in terms of how we pay for it, that strategy actually is cheaper than the status quo. So it essentially pays for itself. Obviously, the cost of the electricity is paid by consumers, but it is a cheaper way forward. I will take issue with the idea of mandating solar on every roof. It's not necessarily the most effective use of the money. There are things that could be done better rather than spread it out like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Tom. So the cheapest energy is the energy that you don't use. And I think we need to educate widely about how to lower the electricity used in our houses and the other resources by looking at more smart metering and making sure people understand that. But in terms of kind of more general, picking up on what was said earlier, I think that when we look at the island as a whole, I think that tidal idea is important, but it's a little bit further down the line. Guernsey is never going to stop being windy. So I think that's going to be definitely the way ahead in terms of small trials to begin with, and then spreading out that has to absolutely be our priority.
Thank you. And to Simon.
I think one of the most crucial things is connectivity, and importantly, we need to renegotiate the contract with EDF, because unless we get that right, we're going to all be paying a lot more for our energy. I think the bit about how we pay for it is critical, because we don't want to end up with energy inequity. But the state has to be a facilitator. And one of the key things that we need to keep doing, and it comes back to a point Paul made earlier, is investing in our infrastructure, upgrading our energy grid. We have to do that first. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen.
Thank you. And we have time for one more concise question, or a question. At the back from Rollo, I think it is.
Hi. If we accept that the transition to the green economy is happening,
How do we ensure we have a just transition for everyone from all levels of society?
Thank you. A just transition for everyone. Neil, you're starting.
What we've heard tonight is a lot of decent people talking about really interesting things. To answer the questioners directly, we need a fiscal policy. We are out of money. This island is out of money. And if we keep vacillating over how we're going to pay for the infrastructure and all the investment that we've spoken about tonight, this will have been a wasted hour and a half. The next government needs to continue to rely on its fiscal policy, or this will be a waste of time. We cannot invest in anything. Thank you.
Thank you. And to Tom.
So I think prioritising revenue-raising environmental projects like the wind farm for the lease exclusivity payments, export of surplus energy, that will all help and gives the possibility of offsetting energy tariffs or lowering tax elsewhere. But as part of Forward Guernsey, we are trying to attempt a wholesale tax reform so that we have a sustainable tax system that is fairer and more fairly balances out the tax burden between businesses, between individuals and high net worth individuals, which currently doesn't happen. At the minute, we're trying to use plasters, but we need to look at the long-term fiscal position.
Thank you. Sarah?
So one of the things about the green economy, and I think was mentioned earlier by Paul, is increasing, putting grants for energy efficiency, the energy that we don't use. So if a household has high energy bills, they can be reduced by having something as simple as that. And that then if you've got grants, then you're producing green jobs, and that multiplier effect is part of how you look at the green economy, as well as fair tariffs and some of the work that's already done by Guernsey Electricity deals with that.
Thank you. And Yvonne?
Thank you. Well, the electricity strategy and the pathway to net zero, which are both approved by the states already, will reduce carbon but also reduce costs when compared with continuing with the current system of energy provision. And a key to increasing energy affordability is by reducing and by phasing demand. And this can be done by demand management measures, and also implementing measures to make homes more efficient, as well as a review of tariff structures, and also energy performance certificates, which will also make homes cheaper to run in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. And to Paul?
Yes, so a transition that leaves no one behind is what we're aiming for here, and I agree with Deputy Inder. I think that will cost money unless we get our fiscal policy sorted. That's going to be incredibly hard. However, one thing I think we do need to do, and I said this at the beginning, is evidence-based decisions. We need not just to measure emissions, but we need to measure fairness. We need to be really clear about energy poverty rates on our island. And so we need to make sure that as we make this transition, it's not a top-down, cost-heavy model, but it's community-driven, redistributive, and transparent to all.
Thank you. And Simon.
As I've already said, it's important to say the States of Guernsey's role is to facilitate the energy transition, not to fund it. It's been agreed that there'll be a review of existing environmental taxes to optimise alignment between financial and wider objectives. So we have to ensure changes we make are in line with current policies, protecting where necessary those on low incomes. And we're committed to meeting the principles of a just transition. So that means making sure the ongoing transition is fair and equitable. And the states have made that commitment. We've now just got to stick to it.
Thank you. And Lee?
I'm somebody who has good experience in the local recycling industry. I'm not an economist. I'm not an environmental scientist. I am just a local lad who absolutely loves our great outdoors and our ocean. So the only thing I can say on this is that if elected, I will absolutely seek out the experts in our community and ensure that I have all the information to protect our beautiful natural landscapes. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the third session. Thank you very much, candidates, for coming along, and good luck for the elections. Thank you very much indeed.
Candidates will each have 2 minutes to run through their priorities. This will then be followed by 30 minutes of audience Q&A. I will be keeping strict time management, so answers to any audience questions will be capped at 40 seconds, so apologies in advance for telling you off. Please can we ask for all audience questions to be as concise as possible, just to save some time. If you need to rethink a question, please do, and we can come back to you. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand, make yourself known to our microphone wranglers who are around the room. I think we'll get started. So on the stage with me, we have Rona Humphreys on the end. We have Deputy Jonathan Lattock, Mark Lane, Dr. David Delisle, that's the one. We have Art Allen, Ross LeBrun, Chris Letitia, Deputy Chris Letitia, and Dr. Andy Sloan. So I'm going to start with Rona Humphreys. I'd like to invite you to state your 2-minute priorities for the environment, please.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here tonight. I'm Rona Humphreys, and I'm impressed you're still around. I'm standing with Forward Guernsey on a manifesto which includes promises around the environment. I've been asked to do a 2-minute introduction based on my priorities, which I find very difficult as the environment is such a big subject and often is put in the too difficult box. But we mustn't let that put us off from looking after the environment. It's so important and influences and is influenced by everything this island has been and wants to be. It needs to be part of every decision we make. The states have already started researching a wind farm, and I think it's imperative that this is continued and built as soon as possible. As well as making a positive environmental change, building the wind farm brings financial advantages and opportunities to our island too. It will be a big, bold, forward-thinking project, but that's exactly the type of project we need to embrace. On a smaller scale, I personally would love to see us transform how we move around the island. I'm in favour of investment in safe, dedicated cycling infrastructure and well-planned one-way systems, which should make cycling and walking safer and keep traffic moving. I support a stronger, reliable public transport system and reduce car dependency. A challenge in itself. Us islanders love our cars, but we can change if it delivers cleaner air and a cleaner environment alongside us as individuals becoming fitter and healthier. That's my personal challenge to you. Finally, business should be required to be part of the change, accounting for their environmental impact. It should be part of their governance requirements, but we need to make it easy and accessible with training to support it. Last time I looked at it, I just didn't understand. Beyond that, I pledge to listen to the experts and be more informed and work with them and support projects that are environmentally beneficial for all. This is about preserving what we love about Guernsey and building a cleaner, more livable island for the future. Thank you.
Bang on time. Thank you so much. Moving on to Deputy Jonathan Lattock.
Thank you. Yes, it's good to see you here tonight. I've been involved in politics for over 20 years, and I come from a family of farmers and growers on the one side and fishermen and growers on the other. So I do feel strongly about our environment and appreciate the fact, because we've lived at Cobo, not very far from here, for 800 years or so. So I've grown up with the stories of Guernsey's environment. And I think it's important that we recognise where we live and that we appreciate and teach the next generation for the just general enjoyment and value of our environment. I was 20 years ago involved with former Deputy Scott Osier and others in those that ensured that we did not have an incinerator on the island, but concentrated on recycling. And I was pleased that the recycling project came to fruition during the time that I was Chief Minister 10 years ago. As a lead for external affairs, I have led on us signing up to the Paris Agreement, so I've had to get involved there. And I've also attended COP alongside Deputy Lindsay de Sausmarez on 2 occasions in person. And it has been there, particularly, that we've been able to promote our credentials through our green finance, sustainable finance initiatives. And that is something that puts Guernsey on the map, and is part of the reason that former Vice President of the US, Al Gore, chose to domicile his green fund here in Guernsey. It helps us to be seen. I was involved in the last term in the formation of the electricity strategy, And I'm glad to see that progressing in the way it is. I do think, however, that one of the primary things that we can do and should be doing is supporting our farmers and our fishermen, because they are the ones that will help us the most to protect our environment.
Brilliant. Thank you. And apologies, Mark, I mispronounced your surname. So Mark Lene, please go on and do your 2-minute statement.
Thank you. I'm Mark Lene. I'm a Guern. I've been running an environmental company and sustainability company for the last 6 years, which I sold in January this year after some illness. And I'm kind of fed up with the double standards. There's some great work that's been going on around signing up to COP, as Jonathan said, and some of the strategic work that Lindsay's done. But, you know, we've got to recognise that we're not taking the whole island with us. We've only got to look at the turnout tonight. I know there's a good football match on, if you support United, that is. But actually, we have to take the population along with us, and it's time for the states to stop dealing with double standards. They're the biggest employer, they're the biggest landowner, they have the biggest built estate, and they need to set an example in their operations. They've got to eat their own dog food. The kind of companies that they do business with, how they do business with those, what are the minimum, you know, if the states says, well, in our procurement selection, we're only going to do business with companies that can demonstrate a certain level of sustainability, that'll drive messages. You know, it's been spoken about solar. Solar may or may not be a good idea, but it's not on Frossard House. If you look at, for instance, the post office have transformed and done it affordably. It's helped with the cost of their operations. So, you know, I put it to the states that it needs to convince the population by doing affordable, real things, not strategies in 20 years' time that come to fruition when we're already hit 3 degrees warming and we'll be too busy doing other things than worrying about those targets. Thank you.
Thank you for your concise timing. David, on to you for your 2-minute statement, please.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Dr. David Delisle. I am a former Environment Minister. Sorry.
It is on silent.
Yeah, and introduced an environmental strategy for Guernsey, the first one, actually. The fact was that we had, at that time, in 2007, an economic development strategy, but we had no environment strategy. And it was my wish to see that we had a balance between economic growth and development and the environmental integrity. In terms of my commitments, protect green fields from development, direct future development on brownfield sites, and fields outside of the agricultural priority areas really deserve protection, which they don't have at the moment. I also want to reduce herbicide use, particularly on crops and gardens. We can see right now that the whole community should be aware of the health dangers with regard to these herbicides. The water, Guernsey Water, for example, has just closed a long hoog to water homes, and St Saviour's Reservoir was closed recently also with regard to the spraying of glyphosate. So I want to reduce pollution in coastal waters also, because we have a major problem there of 16 million litres of raw sewage a day into Belgrave Bay. That has to be dealt with, together with air pollution.
10 seconds.
And I would like to develop, of course, renewable resource potential, solar, tidal and wind power, and make that produced locally for the benefit of Guernsey.
Thank you, Deputy. And moving on to Art Allen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Art Allen O'Leary, but better known locally as Art Allen. And I stand this time as an independent candidate. And I have stood, before I stood in the 2020 elections, And perhaps then some voters might have thought I was a bit of a maverick for wanting things to be done probably too quickly. But as far as the environment is concerned, where what I've heard tonight and what I have to say, I think there's some very good points. For instance, I think the idea of progressing with the wind farm is a great idea from what I know so far. And what would interest me would be to hear from anybody that doesn't think that's a good idea so far. I'm also encouraged by things that Lindsay has said about the tidal power, when she said, yes, but it's not all these things are affordable. So in my book, I think what we should do is look at a lot of things, find out what's affordable and take it from there. My thoughts also regarding green fields is that I feel we should save these green fields. We must do our utmost to save them. And I think, agreeing with a lot of commentators, I think the environmental consideration will be in harmony with improving the economy. Where it does get a little bit difficult for me, as Paul said, am I right? As Paul said, I'm the traffic. So I'm the traffic at the roundabout at the bottom of St. Julian's Avenue, where I'm waiting to go home, and it takes me an hour to get to what I think is the problem with the traffic, and that is the Admiral Park traffic lights. Nobody's mentioned it, but that's the problem.
I'm going to have to stop you there, unfortunately.
No, well, the point is, you have your turn in a minute, but the point is, if we're advocating to have an environment-friendly community and it's taking an hour to get home when it can take 10 minutes to get home, surely that would be a good thing to look into.
Thank you. And moving on to Ross LeBrun.
Thank you. My priorities are making sure we've got a good quality of life here, making it nice to live here. We had a son in 2017, and the older he's got, the more I've noticed things have changed from when I was a boy. I remember going hunting for slow worms and newts, and I haven't seen a slow worm in years, and I sort of missed that ability for the kids to go and do that. Him and his friends like to cycle to school. We're lucky we only live a mile away, but even then, as you'll probably drive out from here, when you go down to the traffic lights, there'll be a queue up to the dozen in the morning. And when we walk past them, we'll jump off the bike, walk down. There's only about 20 cars that we pass, and that's quite a long distance. And people forget that our roads are quite short, so it doesn't take long before they fill up. Our kids are missing out on the freedom and initiative to go out and actually have play and get to school on their own. I want to see growing initiatives here expanding on social initiatives like the prison and Grow Limited. Also, the soil farm community service could be used. We could be doing a lot more here with the land we've got. I mean, as regards fields, we could take lessons from other places. Now, I'm not advocating we become Singapore, but they managed to have, I think it's something like 8 times our population density, and they're still doing very, very well environmentally. We could be taking lessons from them. Instead of building out and doing things we've always done, think differently and build up nice apartments. We're going to have to, unless we want to lose more land. There's no other way around it, because we can't create more land. And that's it.
Thank you. Good timing on that one. Over to Chris Letizia, Deputy Chris Letizia.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Chris Letizia. Guernsey's environment is not just part of our identity. It's central to our economy, our health, and our future. But there's growing pressures on the environment from climate change, biodiversity loss, and unsustainable resource use. Now, if I'm elected, my priorities will focus on protecting what we have, restoring what we've lost, and building a greener, fairer, and, very importantly, an affordable future. Guernsey must adopt a clear principle of no net loss of biodiversity, ensuring that the development which we all need is balanced with nature-positive action. Now, secondly, the transition to a clean and secure energy system really must be accelerated. Now, that includes investing in local renewables, solar and wind, and tidal, well, that's in the distant future, I believe. Now, we also need to improve the thermal efficiency of our housing stock, because that will save a lot of energy. But again, I go back to, crucially, this transition must be fair and affordable. Thirdly, I will support the move towards a circular economy. We must reduce waste, improve recycling even further, and expand reuse schemes, shifting away from a throwaway culture. Finally,
10 seconds.
I believe we need to properly value Guernsey's natural capital, land, sea and ecosystems. They are assets that support our economy, and they must be protected, from farming and fisheries to retail and finance. This is just not about conservation, it's Guernsey conservation. And with a clear vision, Guernsey can become a model for a small island sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. And finally, Dr. Andy Sloan.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Andy Sloan. I was the one that put Guernsey Green Finance on the map back in 2018. I championed sustainable finance here. I represented the island at international forums. I was an expert reviewer for the last intergovernmental panel on climate change assessment. And I helped build our reputation as a responsible, forward-looking finance sector. When I stepped away, Guernsey was the clear leader amongst the offshore centres in sustainable finance. I'm still nowadays very much engaged in the climate agenda. I advise board and regulators on climate risk. I help local firms with climate reporting and disclosure. And I'm part of Green Air, a company that's looking to bring commercial hydrogen and electric aviation to the Channel Islands. So this isn't something I just talk about every 4 years. I'm a strong supporter of climate action, but I also believe we have to be realistic. The problem with net zero isn't the ambition, it's that no one's figured out yet how to fund it. And that's why we need to stay laser focused on affordability and impact. Public money should go where it makes the biggest difference. Personally, I prioritise investing in clean energy infrastructure, electric heating, low carbon power, rather than subsidising marginal insulation projects that don't shift the dial. Now, nature protection matters too, but we need to get a grip on what we've got. I support marine protected areas and biodiversity targets, but they need to be grounded in proper data and designed for Guernsey, not just copied from somewhere else. If elected, I'll bring leadership, experience, and a strategic economics-based mindset to help build a green economy that works for the planet, for Guernsey, and for people's pockets. What we need now is credible, costed, funded plans, not just good intentions. And that's what I'll fight for. Thank you.
Perfect, Simon. Thank you very much, Dr. Sloan. So that concludes the 2-minute statements, but I will now move on to questions. And I promise this is the last time that Blue Marine Foundation will ask you a question about marine protected areas, this evening at least. So we'll start. May I remind you that the answers will be capped at 40 seconds. So my first question is to Deputy Jonathan Lattock and the rest of the deputies. What is your opinion on marine protected areas and how do you think they would work for Guernsey?
Thank you. Yes, I think my opinion is they're a great idea, but as as Dr. Sloan just said, we've got to make sure that we haven't got a one-size-fits-all type of approach to Guernsey. We are a small island, and in terms of monitoring, policing and enforcement, these things cost. And we've got to recognise this. Also, that our territorial seas are 3 times the size of Jersey's, and that includes Alderney and Sark. And we have to bring them into that as well.
Thank you. And moving on to Mark Lene.
Yeah,
in line with my answer before, the strategies are great. I support marine conservation areas, but there are tactical things that we can do today. So, for instance, moorings at Havelock Bay and Fermain Bay. We could look at moorings that don't scrub the sea bottom and remove the seagrass. There's nothing stopping us doing that today. We could get, there's no question that if the states were behind it, we could get companies that would sponsor it and pay for those moorings. Those are things that we can do today while we're waiting for a strategy.
Thank you. Moving on to Deputy David Delisle.
Yes, I support marine protected areas. We desperately need them here to restore damaged ecosystems and conserve the marine resources and marine life. It's difficult to understand why we've damaged so much the natural environment. The Little Rouxel raw sewage damage, shell fishery oysters limitation in the vicinity of Boset, and the Fort George pollution of the bathing pools vicinity of Social Bay. All that we have to deal with, and I think marine protected areas will provide that particular assurance to the public that we are actually going to deal with some of these problems, environmental problems, that we've let go.
Thank you, Deputy. Art Allen.
Yes, I entirely agree with all the comments made so far. But I would suggest that we need the cooperation of boat owners, and while boat owners are having to subsidise the failure at the airport, I can't really see how you're going to get that sort of cooperation. We should all be in this together to do a great job, and at the moment we're obviously not doing a great job.
Thank you. And moving on to Ross Lebrun.
Yeah, I support the idea. I see Jersey's got 23% at the moment. They were aiming for 30. Hopefully they get that. They've done well to get their fishing industry on their side. They've got a bigger industry than what we have. If anyone remembers, back probably about 15 years ago, we had a reef by the Bow Blondel off the west coast when people were hammering the bass over there because there were shoals of them. Whether they've moved on because of the seas warming up or whatever, but they've gone now. We could also be looking at the shoreline too.
10 seconds.
Okay.
10 seconds.
All right. Ormering every year, I mean, there are a lot of ormers. The stocks are good, but what happens is that a lot of the rocks get left turned over and it destroys the habitat that needs to recover. A lot of people aren't responsible enough to roll the stones back. So we could have small, and I've even seen shore gatherers actually suggesting that themselves, that we could have areas like that here.
Thanks, Ross. And moving on to Deputy Chris Letizia.
Yes, I support MPAs, but not as blanket bans, but as smart, locally designed zones that protect our marine life and also support sustainable fishing. If done right, MPAs can rebuild fish stocks, boost ecotourism, and help our seas stay healthy for the future generations. It's about working with our fishing community using good science and planning for the long term so that our waters around Guernsey stay productive, diverse and resilient.
Perfect. Thank you. And moving on to Dr. Andy Sloan.
Yep. I believe marine protected areas are necessary to help safeguard Guernsey's marine biodiversity. We need a balanced approach. The key to designing MPAs is to protect vital marine habitats without unnecessarily restricting people's livelihoods. Guernsey's fishing community in particular must be involved in crafting the MPAs. They've got to work for everyone. The goal should be sustainable marine environments which will benefit both nature and local industries like fishing in the long term.
Perfect. Thank you. And lastly, moving on to Rona Humphreys.
Being incredibly frank, when I first read the question, I went, oh my word, what is an MPA? I would like to assure you I now know what one is. And having done that research, I've come to the conclusion that we have an absolute responsibility to create them. I think they'd benefit Guernsey by protecting their marine habitats, supporting the fish stocks and building climate resilience. They need to be done well. The correct people who understand Guernsey's very specific tides, tidal flows alongside our fishermen, our boat owners, need to be involved in a consultation process to enable us to complete a marine spatial plan. People don't realise, I didn't realise, the positive impact these areas have on fish stocks and the seagrass on climate change, for example. It's essential we do something.
Thank you, Rona. And I'll now open the questions up to the audience, the floor. Any questions in the audience?
Good evening. Thanks for giving us a chance to have a chat. How are you going to pay for the switch from green energy with the conflicts of interest between Guernsey Electric and government? Obviously, we've got to pay our electricity bill, and there's going to be an ongoing cost to buy the infrastructure to do the works. How are we going to fund the works?
Clear question. I'll start off with Mark Lene.
Yeah, indeed, a good question. Not easy. As was mentioned in the previous panel, we need the finances to be able to pay for it. So we need to focus on our economy, and we need to work on smaller projects in the interim. There has been work done in the private sector, and the whole buyback tariff has been a big issue. So having energy security in terms of the permanence and the existence of Guernsey electricity and having competing power generation is a real quandary.
Thank you. And moving on to Deputy David Delisle.
Yes. Rather than supporting a third cable to France, I think a lot of that money, £100 million, that money could be placed in the hands of local people in order to develop themselves local renewables. And if that was divided by household, you've got about £3,000 per household that could be used in terms of renewable development by household.
Thank you. And moving on to Art Allen.
I agree with Mr. Lene. We need to boost the economy. The economy is everything. The economy should get us out of this. Taxation, the old stuff. It has to be the economy to get us out of this, to pay for what we deserve and need, and we have to do things a lot quicker than the government had been doing. But it was a great question, but I'm sure we can get out of this by boosting the economy.
Thank you. Ross?
I'm not going to blag that I know the answer to that, but I did work for Guernsey Electricity for 9 years as a jointer in the roads. And a lot of the obviously the money we pays for because it's a bit like painting Sydney Harbour Bridge. You renew all the cables and you've got to do it again. It's going to be constant work the whole time. So we do need to be able to generate electricity on island to cope with when we're not getting it imported. How it's funded and how it's paid for to transition to greener. I'm not going to say anything other than the economy or.
Thanks, Ross. Moving on to Deputy Letitia.
Thank you. Well, the states can facilitate this transition, but at the moment it has no money. So who's going to pay? Well, the user will pay some, obviously, and to repeat what other panellists have said, if we grow the economy, the states will have more money, and therefore they can put some in, but it's a bit chicken and egg. But a lot is going to depend on Guernsey Electricity, what they can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Dr. Andy Sloan.
It's not a 40-second answer question, is it really? You've got to remember that the investment horizon is, 20, 30, 40 years, so these are going to be over that sort of time period. One of the issues we've got is you've got to get rid of the oil-fired generation on the island and replace that, so that's where we're going to need to focus our resources, and also to encourage people to actually produce their own renewable energies themselves. That self-sufficiency in energy production, which is just completely absent in our current strategy. We've got to encourage more of that because it reduces the amount that you actually need to produce otherwise produce.
Thank you. And moving back to Rona Humphreys.
I come from a place of the cost of not doing it far outweighs the cost of doing it. Whilst that doesn't address how you find the pounds to make the payments now, we've got to do this. We've got to grow our economy, but actually by doing it, we grow and protect our economy. Investors are looking for green investments. Things like the wind farm will itself create an economy around it. So it's a bit of a dichotomy of a question, but where I come from is it's actually worse not to do it than it is not to find the money to do it.
Thank you. And finally, Deputy Jonathan Lattock.
Thank you. If it was only the energy transition question that we were looking at in terms of investment, then it might be an easier thing to deal with. But we have, for some time now, underinvested in our infrastructure. And so I can't see anything except the need for us to diversify our taxation, first of all, so that we can afford to borrow, because quite frankly, we're going to need to do that. We may get to a better place once we've got through that. It will be amortized over a few decades, but that's what we're going to need to do. Everybody will need to pay more for a while.
Thank you. Next question, please. Have one here.
Hi, hello. We're all talking here about very high-level stuff and about what the government can do, but we are a community, and when COVID hit us, we saw the impact of COVID on our doorstep. Individuals don't see the impact, I don't think, of climate change. So would it not be best to actually educate the community of the small steps they can take to reduce something, I think one of you said before about, electricity, reduce electricity usage, how to insulate their home, what it actually means. I went to a talk recently at WI, and this lady came up to me and she said, I use my old knickers for rags, which, okay, was quite shocking, but you can actually buy rags from the shop. So would you, when in government, look at doing an island-wide campaign to the community to bring them along for the journey, to see how they can individually reduce their carbon footprint?
Yes, I think that's quite a clear question. So what can candidates do to educate the community on reducing their carbon footprint and towards the environment? So I will start with Dr. Deputy David Lyle, sorry.
I agree with you. Education is absolutely key, and bringing the population with you is very, very important as well for deputies to understand. The problem always is that it takes time to get a message across. For example, I brought biodiversity into the States in 2007, and it's taken a long time to actually get to the position that we're in at the current time. And it's very important to not only bring the population along with you, but also to foster education throughout the community and bring them along as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Deputy. Art Allen.
Thank you. Strangely enough, I was having this very same conversation at lunchtime with a couple of friends about trying to encourage people to insulate their houses and things like solar panels on the roof, stuff like that. And the people I was speaking to were saying things like, yes, but what about the not so privileged people? If you go and say to them, go and insulate your house, go and put solar panels up in your house. These people are working to survive as opposed to working to live, and they've got so many other things on their mind. So we need to bring this all together and focus on how can people on low wages afford to do this. Yes, but you. Yeah. Yes, sorry, but you did mention insulate your house.
You did mention that, yeah, as part of the question. Yeah.
So yeah, the question to the rest of the candidates: what individually can members of the public be doing, and how do you plan to educate those members of the public on those issues? So I'll move on to Ross, please.
Yeah, I got the gist of what you meant, but the small steps is actually the 3 priorities I mentioned at the start. If we build apartments, they become suddenly more heat efficient, and also there's less joints on you've got one cable, one joint to that property, not lots of future failure points. Growing more locally potentially means less waste on island that has to be sent off, and obviously becoming less dependent on cars, treating them like body armour that we need to get in to be safe on the roads.
Deputy Letitia?
Yes, I agree that we do need to educate the public, but many of the members of the public do know about climate change. They can see how the weather has changed even in our lifetime. But I think the problem is, it's not that they don't understand climate change, but we're living in a cost of living crisis. Now, if it means putting food on your table or insulating your loft, I would guess 9.9 people out of 10 are going to say, I can't, I'll do that, I'll do the loft later.
Thank you, Deputy. Dr. Andy Sloan.
Yeah, I think you got a point. I mean, and I was going to say something. I looked at a firm locally recently, and we looked at their emissions, and basically, mainly it was aviation and waste. That was big because we're lucky on Guernsey because actually we import our electricity. The carbon content of it's virtually nothing, and it's the other things that are causing the emissions. And actually, as soon as they realised that, as soon as they educated, well, crying out loud, we can get rid of this waste. We all thought there wasn't any emissions associated with it, get rid of it off island. No, there's still emissions associated with it. They don't generate it. You can do something. And it's little things like that. And when you explain to people what's up, they get into it, they buy into doing some stuff. Can you get the island to get there? Right, there's another 40 seconds, I can't get there. But you're absolutely right. There are little things that people can do that they're unaware of.
Thank you. And moving back to Rona Humphreys.
Yes, of course, outreach is essential. The high level of non-engagement demonstrated here, to be honest, we've been here most of the evening with very few more people in the audience. I think there is an ESG burnout, and I think there is a Just Stop Oil Crazies label that people just are now avoiding. But we've achieved it as an island with recycling, so it can be done. I think small, quick, punchy campaigns, adverts, radio, posters, whatever, turn your tap off, turn your light off. Let's not overkill with science. Lots of people don't understand science. Lots of people understand simple.
Thank you. And moving on to Deputy Jonathan Laddock.
Thank you. Yes, I was brought up by parents who lived through the German occupation and the years of rationing, and so they had a very much a make, do and mend type of attitude, and we've passed that on to our children as well. I think you can have great fun with that. And it means we're not disposing of so much, which is good for a small island community. I think we can learn from the stories of others as well in a small way. We've been invited to join the Conference of Peripheral Maritime Regions, which includes lots of small islands around Europe, and that some of them are doing some excellent work which we can learn from.
Thank you. And moving to Mark Lene.
Yeah, I think we should educate, and as I said before, the states need to set an example. I don't know the answer to this question, but here's a simple one. There are companies over here that produce bio soap from seaweed here. How many states' departments stock that soap rather than importing stuff? If we don't set an example, that we can educate all we want and it won't work. And I think the other thing that we have here is we have no voice of challenge, whether it's a company, a state's department or individuals. Anyone can say what they want about how gloriously green they are and it goes unchallenged. That's a real shortcoming.
Thank you. Next question, please, from the audience. Any hands? Lindsay. They were previously.
Thanks. For full transparency, I'm also a candidate. Guernsey is one of the only places, probably, that doesn't have a wildlife law. Can you make a case for prioritising wildlife legislation And what are some of the benefits or indeed challenges that you foresee in doing so?
Thank you. I think the first we'll move to Art Allen.
Well, thanks, Lindsay, for such an easy question. Not. I think that most people would welcome that. Animal lovers will tick all the boxes. Again, you mentioned it earlier, everything comes down to cost, but I would say that you will get a big tick from a majority of people, and I think it should be encouraged.
10 seconds.
I think it should be encouraged by everybody. I think it's a wonderful question, and I think it will go down brilliantly. I really do.
Thank you. Moving on to Ross.
I'm not entirely sure what a wildlife law is, to be honest, but I can imagine that it's about protecting wildlife. In the UK, you're not allowed to tear down houses that have got swifts in, or bats, or barn owls, but we don't have nothing like that over here. I remember when they were pulling down the old Boet, there was swifts in them, and that wouldn't have happened in the UK. So there is stuff that we could be doing better here.
Thank you. And moving on to Deputy Chris Letizia.
Thank you. Well, this can be answered. It's a no-brainer. Everyone is going to say they want to protect wildlife, but without knowing exactly what's being proposed, the saying is the devil's in the detail. So, in principle, I'm sure everyone would agree. But then we have the cost to think about. How much is it going to cost people? How many more civil servants are we going to need to implement it? And are there any unintended consequences? So, I'd say yes in principle, but let's see what's in the law.
Thank you, Deputy. And moving on to Dr. Andy Sloan.
I'll give you a totally honest answer. I don't know. You asked me what if I prioritise it, and you say to you, above what? When you prioritise it, something else has to give. And I go, well, what's giving for you to do? And tell me what the benefits of this wildlife law are immediately. And then you have to take a view when you can afford those benefits.
Thank you. Moving on to Rona Humphreys.
Of course, Guernsey should have a wildlife law. But Lindsay said, should we prioritise it? And no, I don't think we should prioritise it in this term. I think there are other more urgent things to do. I think it would be a vote winner, but I don't think it's what we should prioritise. And I do think that most Guernsey people do the right thing most of the time in any case. So as a priority, not right now.
Thank you, Rona. Moving on to Deputy Jonathan Lattock.
I'm on record, and Lindsay will know this, as saying that we over-legislate. And the problem with doing that means that something seems like a great idea, but then we struggle to monitor it, to enforce it, and to police it. I think we need to look at the objectives. I might have the same objectives that might be achievable by other means, at least in smaller steps, by education, encouragement, and example. And I think that would be the way to go first.
Thank you. And Mark Lenné?
Yeah, possibly. As was said before, devil's in the detail. I certainly wouldn't be in favour of copying what's done in the UK and dumping it into Guernsey. It's got to be appropriate for the island, and I'd love to see a business case for prioritising it or otherwise.
Thank you. And Deputy Delisle.
Yes, we're losing biodiversity, and this law would help protect wildlife. And I think that the late Griff Caldwell, for example, of the Société, was very keen on bringing in a wildlife law. And this certainly would work against the problem of toxic chemicals, for example, that are having an effect on our wildlife. This could be outlawed through that particular law.
Thank you. And that concludes the Q&A session, and therefore concludes the session, and therefore concludes the evening. So a huge thank you to all the candidates for turning up today and taking part. Thank you to the audience as well. Thank you to the volunteers. And also thank you again to the GCRA for sponsoring the drinks next door. So this was recorded. It wasn't live streamed, so we'll be publishing the recording later down the line. We'll be drafting a report which summarises all the answers and questions asked to, so we'll publish that online as well. And there are also a few candidates who really wanted to take part today, but unfortunately weren't able to join, so I'll make sure that the public are aware of those candidates too. This was very much a test to see if this kind of format works. Very keen to hear feedback from both members of the public and also candidates. If it doesn't work, we'd have to do it again. If it does work, we'd be very interested to chat about how we might make that work in the future. But thank you again, and I hope it was a useful piece of time. Thank you.